Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
Did you hesitated there for a second?
I was on the other side of the room.
Oh, first of all, how about them Predators last night? Another victory, 6 in a row. And we'll get to them and all of that at 3 o'clock, which we're very, very excited about. Last night was 6 great minutes of hockey, 30 bad minutes of hockey, and then an unbelievable third period from the Predators last night. They win. Congratulations to the Nashville Predators. Also, congratulations to Jerry Stackhouse. You see that, Ian?
The win.
I mean, he is Eric Musselman.
On the road.
And Eric Musselman is a good basketball coach. I don't think Arkansas is having a good season like they've had in the past, but Eric Musselman is a good basketball coach. And Jerry Stackhouse, for the third year in a row, has beaten Arkansas. I mean, I don't know what it is about Jerry Stackhouse, but to the 15 people over there at Vanderbilt that think Jerry Stackhouse is a good coach, congratulations to you all, because there was a lot of smoke coming in Jerry's direction, and Jerry got that big win last night. They held on at the end, so guess what? Good for them. So, I want to start on this. I heard in Nick Frazier's update right there that started our show, he talked about how much cap space the Titans have. And I keep hearing that. They got asked yesterday about a cap space, cap space, cap space. And you know I think the cap's fake, but I think the money's real. And the Titans have money to spend. So when it comes to deciding what to do with that money, the one thing I want to preface, everything that has to do with the Titans' football operations, business operations might be a little different. They can worry about the stadium, and they can worry about the 2027 season and everything else. But the football operations of the Titans, everybody should be pulling the rope in one direction, and that one direction should be what makes Will Levis a great quarterback. That's it. Everything they do should be to make Will Levis a great quarterback. And regardless of how people want to define what's a good quarterback or whatever it may be, a pro football focus, grades, big time throws, the reality of our society, you may not like it, is that wins are a quarterback stat. The analytics nerds, Eric Ager, who came on our show at the Super Bowl, who I like a lot, by the way, he's a good man. He's with Sumer Sports. He has been tweeting ad nauseum about how Justin Herbert is as good as Joe Burrow. Not one person in America would argue that Justin Herbert is as good as Joe Burrow, except for him. Why? Because Burrow's wins are a quarterback stat, just like Herbert's losses. So what do the Titans have to do in order to make Levis a great quarterback? Well, we know they have to coach him. They have to get him to master the offense. They learn, hey, this is what we're trying to get you to do. They've got to get him to learn defenses around the NFL. Hey, when you see that safety shade over there, you know that spot's going to be open. Understand the nuances of protection, and we all know that's a given. But they have to provide him with help. And that doesn't just mean wide receiver and offensive line. Wide receiver is important. Offensive line's important. But that's not it. That's not the key to success. That's not okay, we've got a receiver, we've got an offensive line, we're good. So this is why I think with all that cap space or available cash or whatever it may be, I believe the Tennessee Titans should be huddling up in their suite in Indianapolis, and they should be discussing one name right now. Chris Jones. You're going to say, wait a minute. What, Jared? That's not a left tackle. That's not a wide receiver. That's not the one position the Titans have is defensive tackle. They've got one of the best in the league. You want Chris Jones? Yes. And here's why. Because with the news coming down that the Kansas City Chiefs have placed the franchise tag on L'Jarius Sneed, Chris Jones is a free agent. And this will be the first time in his Hall of Fame career that Chris Jones hits free agency. And yes, he'll be 30 years old, which means that it's probably not likely, not out of the realm of possibility, but it's not likely that he'll still be a great player when the Titans move into that new stadium. But that doesn't matter, because what matters is what's best for Levis, because Levis is 24. And when they move into that new stadium, he will be entering the prime of his career. And you better hope that he's a star quarterback and that he's not some backup that goes from team to team to team like Mitch Trubisky. Having a dominant defense is a lot easier to attain in the NFL than a dominant offense. And the reason for that is because no team trades 3 number 1 draft choices like San Francisco did in order to draft a defensive tackle. Right? Nobody is like, okay, we got to give $55 million a year to Sauce Gardner. Nobody. So it is easier to build your defense. Who's the top defensive player on the board in this draft, by the way? So while everybody's worried about offense, the Cleveland Browns sold their soul and their franchise for a quarterback who might not be very good. On the other side of the ball, they've got the meanest, baddest defensive lineman in the league. How you think they got to the playoffs last year? So you can do this on defense. And I watched Javon Curse transform the Titans from 3 straight 8-8 seasons into a 13-3 AFC champion, which brings me back to Jones. Pairing Jeffrey Simmons with Chris Jones would give the Titans arguably the best defensive tackle duo in the history of the NFL in the salary cap era. I was thinking off the top of my head, are there any other 2 dynamic defensive tackles that are probably both headed to the Hall of Fame, though Simmons has a lot more work to do? And I don't know. Warren Sapp played with Simeon Rice, but Simeon Rice was a defensive end. I mean, we're talking about 2 of the 4 best defensive tackles in the NFL. I looked today when it came to Pro Football Focus, and I said, okay, how much would it cost if the Titans were to decide that, you know what, we're going to use all this cap space, we're going to go get Chris Jones. Pro Football Focus says 4 years, $120 million, $30 million a year. 3 years guaranteed. So you're looking at an $80 million commitment, according to Pro Football Focus, in order to sign Chris Jones. Now, that might be too rich for your blood. But let me ask you this. 3 guaranteed years. How many more years is Will Levis on a rookie contract for? 3. The same 3 years you'd be guaranteeing Chris Jones. See, everybody else has to pay their quarterback $50 million a year. You don't. So you can pay a defensive tackle $30 million. In fact, you can pay Simmons and Jones the combined amount, and you're looking at $47 million in cash. That's about how much teams pay for a quarterback. With Jones and Simmons together, the Titans' defense and team would be better overnight, and you know it. Chris Jones is what Barry Trotz would call a serial winner, and quite frankly, in these big Chiefs playoff games over the years, he's been by far the most dominant defensive player. We talk about Mahomes, and Mahomes is the secret. Massive out-of-nowhere play. He lines up at defensive end. He lines up inside. They'll put him whatever. He crushed you in the AFC Championship game in 2019. I mean, there was a play, a screen pass that Tony Romo, and granted, who knows, Tony's, Monday, Tuesday, whatever. But there was a screen pass in the AFC title game in which Tony Romo says, if Chris Jones doesn't get in the lane and knock that ball down, Zay Flowers takes it into the end zone for a touchdown. That's how you get to the Super Bowl. The old saying is, fortune favors the bold. And if the Titans want to be bold, signing Chris Jones would be just that. Last week, we saw an ESPN.com story that said a bold move would be signing Tyler Boyd. I'm sorry. Tyler Boyd, Hollywood Brown, Jonah Williams, Tyler Biadasz, Chidobe Awuzie. Those aren't bold moves. Those are basic moves. And basic moves will get you back to where everybody else is. That same just dipping your toe in the water saying, okay, we got a tackle, we got a inside backer, we got a... No. This is bold. saying, hey, we've got one of the best defensive tackles in the league. And what are we going to do? We're going to supplement him with another incredible defensive tackle. And if the Titans were to go to Chris Jones and give him $120 million, which I would try to do, if the Titans were able to do that, it would be hard to argue with both the rest of the league and their own fan base that the Titans are cheap or that they don't care. Because while I don't believe necessarily that the Titans are cheap, and I don't believe that the Titans ownership doesn't care, some people think that. You make this move, you can't say that. And on top of it, there are fans that believe it, and those are the people that you're asking to spend hundreds of millions of dollars for your PSLs for your new stadium, which, by the way, we're paying $1.2 billion for. So there is my plea. Go after Chris Jones. He's the best free agent on the market. He plays a premium position. He is a game changer. And I just think about what it would look like next to your best player on the team to put another mamma jamma great player in Chris Jones. And I think, you know what? That's how you make Will Levis's life easier. That Indianapolis game last year, where Levis led you back, scored a touchdown at the end, got the ball in overtime, kicked a field goal, but you couldn't get a stop. Think it'll be harder for old Gardner Minshew if Chris Jones is in that backfield? I think so. So we talk about cap space, cap space, cap space. Somebody has to sign Chris Jones. It ain't going to be the Chiefs, or else the Chiefs would have already signed Chris Jones. By the way, Ian, did you see the NFLPA survey and what Clark Hunt got from his own players, the grade he got?
I didn't see, but I heard it was not bad or not good.
F minus.
Yeah, not good.
Because he's a cheap ass. So they're not going to sign Chris Jones. They're not going to tag Chris Jones. If they were going to sign Chris Jones, they would have already signed Chris Jones. Somebody has to sign him. Why not you? You've got the most cap space, right? That's what this is all about. Cap space. So why not? 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. And I thought today, usually we always want to start the show off on the number one story of what's going on. And I was thinking, you know what? I want to get this point across today. This is important to me because I think everybody in Titanland is too caught up on Hollywood Brown and Gabe Davis and all these other non-game changers. And I think the Titans need to be bold. So even though there's no link about the Titans and Chris Jones, there's no Adam Schefter reports. No, there's none of that. But they need to huddle up in Indianapolis, and they need to say, you know what? We need to kick the tires here because this is going to make us a much better football team. It's like Corey Curtis always says, you don't get better by getting rid of good players. You do get better by adding Chris Jones. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. What would that look like? Simmons and Jones next to each other. Well, we asked Trevor what he had to say. We'll do that next. And, of course, your phones. Window Nation. They're the best. That's right. WindowNation.com. Window Nation came out to my house a couple of weeks ago. And, they are the experts. Not only are they the experts on window replacement and what you need and what you don't need, they're really the experts on energy efficiency. You guys get energy bills just like I do. A day like today is a perfect day in which bad windows could screw you. Because not only was it 70 degrees this morning, we had that massive storm and the wind, and now it's 40 degrees. And if you've got bad windows, all of that's going to affect your home. So what you need to do is take a look at your windows, put your hand up there now that it's cold again, see if that cold draft's getting in there, if you're constantly fooling around with the thermostat one way or another, and ask yourself, do I need a free in-home estimate from Window Nation? The answer is probably yes, by the way. And not only is it a free in-home estimate, but when you call out Window Nation, they've got a special deal for you. Replace your windows this month and save big with 50% off all window styles, plus 0 down, 0 interest, and no payments for 24 months. And an extra 10% on top of it. So you're not only getting 50% off, and you're getting 0 down, and you're getting 0 interest, and you're getting 0 payments for 2 years, but you're also getting another 10% off. How's that sound? Do not miss out. Call 866-90-NATION or visit windownation.com. Again, that's 866-90-NATION, windownation.com. Jones and Simmons, can they coexist? And if they can coexist, how dominant can they be?
Yes, they can coexist. I'm sure they would love to coexist because they would complement each other. You can't really double team both of them. And I think that if the Titans were able to do that, it would be phenomenal. Jared, if you were to start an expansion team right now, what would be the three position groups that you would prioritize?
Quarterback, receiver, and pass rusher.
See, I'd take quarterback, pass rusher, and D line, and then offensive line.
Sure.
And if you are dominant on that defensive line, it just makes everything better. And for Jones, if they're able to swing it financially with the cap, then if they were able to get him here, it would be astonishing for this team. And it would make up for a whole lot of other problems at linebacker and secondary level.
Trevor loves it. Trevor's on board. And here's what I got to say again. When people say, hey, if they can make it work with the cap, and again, I think the cap's fake, but let's play pretend world and let's say the salary cap actually matters. You've got the most cap space. You've got the lowest payroll in the league. You've got the most cap space. So how could you not make it work? You've got a young second-round quarterback. Not that, again, rookie contracts are rookie contracts, but C.J. Stroud's contract at second overall is way more money than the amount of money that Will Levis got paid as the second pick of the second round. So how could somebody else make it work, but you not make it work if you've got the most money? And again, what did Trevor say right there? 1, they absolutely can coexist, Simmons and Chris Jones. 2, Simmons and Chris Jones would probably love it because you can't double team both of them. You got 5 offensive linemen. You got to put 2 guys on Jones, 2 guys on Simmons, and now Arden Key and Harold Landry are getting right to the quarterback every play. I have seen this before. Do you remember Albert Haynesworth and Kyle Vandenbosch? And how Albert Haynesworth at his best, and Albert Haynesworth at his best probably wasn't as good as Aaron Donald, but is like a step below what Aaron Donald was. Haynesworth at his best. The 2 years he was motivated, Haynesworth's maybe the best defensive player I've ever seen play for the Titans. And he sent everybody to the Pro Bowl. Nick Harper went to the Pro Bowl. Michael Griffin went to the Pro Bowl. Kyle Vandenbosch went to the Pro Bowl. Cortland Finnegan went to the Pro Bowl. They all went to the Pro Bowl because they had Albert, who was just wrecking things for everybody. Well, now it's like, all right, you got Albert at defensive tackle, and you've got Albert, too, at the other defensive tackle. What are we talking about? Why are we wasting our time talking about Hollywood Brown and Calvin Ridley and Gabriel Davis and Andre James? But who gives a rat's ass about Andre James? We're talking Chris Jones here. And I also think this, too. I love Danico Autry. And I thought Danico Autry, they signed him $7 million a year when they signed him. I'm like, that is an incredible signing. They signed him and Dupree the same day. And I said the one that I actually am more excited about is Autry because I've seen Autry just eat the Titans for breakfast every Sunday that the two teams play each other. Well, Autry's good. He ain't Chris Jones. And so putting Chris Jones in there next to Simmons, I mean, we're talking about putting Sammy Sosa and Mark McGuire next to each other in the same batting order. And I think this is what the Texans did because the Texans were terrible. And we laughed at the Texans, and the Texans were stupid, and they were hiring new coaches every year, and they had the team chaplain running the organization, and they prayed to see if Josh McCown could be their head coach, and it was a disaster. And then all of a sudden, they got rid of all of that, and they went big. Because, again, you got options. You can go big, go home. They went big. That was a gutsy move that they made on draft night to move back up to get Will Anderson Jr., and they paid a fortune for it. And what they rationalized was, we're going to get the best offensive player and we're going to get the best defensive player. In free agency, Texans did the same thing. You know, the Texans had the 5th highest payroll in the NFL last year. Why? Because they paid their tackle $30 million. So when you tell me you can't pay the DT $30 million, well, they're paying the left tackle $30 million. Why can't you pay Chris Jones $30 million? You can do it. Again, money should not be the problem in the equation. And then I think about Landry. Landry last year, I felt, had a down season for what the expectations of Harold Landry are because Harold Landry's a good player. He's not a great player, but he's a good player. But he had the ACL, and they told us the whole year, hey, you got to be patient with these guys coming off the ACLs. And he really didn't look like Harold Landry until December. Landry had 10 sacks last year. So now Harold Landry is back, 100% healthy, knock on wood, and I'm going to put Jeffrey Simmons and Chris Jones on the same offensive line as him. And not only that, when Simmons has to come out of the game in order to get some oxygen, Jones can be in. And then when Jones has to come out, Simmons goes back in. He's the best free agent on the market. You've got the most money. He's the only game-changing slam dunk guy on the free agent market. Kirk Cousins, you could argue, but he's coming off the Achilles, and he's good, but he's not that good. Chris Jones, he's going to the Hall of Fame. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Let's get to some phones. Phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Michael, start us off today on Chris Jones. Thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. I am 100% all in on the Chris Jones train. If we can make it happen, that needs to be the number one priority until draft day when we're actually picking the next player. Because if you look at the past, I can't even think off the top of my head, but just the past 3 Super Bowls, the Chiefs, the Rams, Chris Jones was the best defensive player on the Chiefs teams, and Aaron Donald was the best player on that Rams team, and they are arguably the reason that they won all 3 of those Super Bowls, because Aaron Donald made that 4th down play. Chris Jones was blowing up the 49ers line all game, and he was doing it the same thing against the Eagles in the second half of the Super Bowl. So when you just look at it, if you can get a game-changing defensive tackle like Chris Jones is, because he's just a step under Aaron Donald, and if he can come to this team and be a twin wrecking force with Jeffrey Simmons, I mean, that's the best defensive tackle pairing probably in the last decade of the league.
I agree. And what's crazy to me is, and I appreciate your call, Michael, what's crazy to me is that this – I mean, again, I don't want to say, like, I'm the first person to bring this up. But I feel like this is the first I've heard of any talk about the Titans and Chris Jones. Now, again, I thought the Chiefs were going to try something with the tag or something to try to keep him, but they tagged L'Jarius Sneed, and now I think they've given L'Jarius Sneed permission to seek a trade, but I don't think L'Jarius Sneed is the determining factor of whether or not they sign Chris Jones. I think they just don't want to spend the money. And I think Chris Jones has been playing for a contract. But I haven't heard anybody else bring this up, and I don't see why the top player that is a game wrecker. When it comes to the Chiefs and their Super Bowls, I think we can all agree. The most important player throughout the entire run that they've had is Mahomes. And Chris Jones is undoubtedly the second most important player. Then there's Kelsey, Hill, Frank Clark, Sneed, McDuffie. Like, those guys are certainly in the – but they're not Chris Jones in terms of his importance to those 3 Super Bowls. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Money should not be an issue on the Chris Jones front. But as I talk about it, I read your texts, I take your calls. Ian and I are talking about it off the air. There's one thing about this that makes me incredibly uncomfortable. Not about the Titans signing Chris Jones, but just the reality of their ability to do that. We'll get to that coming up next. Here on Stillman & Company, 615-737-1025. Nashville's best deal this week is 312 Pizza Company. 312 Pizza Company serves the best pizza in town as well as Chicago-style eats like Chicago dogs, Italian beef sandwiches, and more. Get half off a $30 gift card to 312 Pizza Company at theGameNashville.com/deals now while supplies last. That's 312 Pizza Company, Stillman & Company, 1025, 106 The Game.
do you subscribe to the fact that you might have to pay a little bit more than the sticker price, or that you wanted to, but if that guy is worth it, that you and Amy are willing to do it?
Yeah, absolutely. But I look at it like this. The market is the market, right? I hear, obviously I'm new to Nashville, but I hear people talk about the housing market and the cost of homes of what it used to be in Nashville versus what it is now, and at the end of the day, you have to pay, what the market dictates, however, you can look at it as the average per year, or you can look at it as the percentage of the cap. And usually the percentage of the caps are numbers that kind of stay consistent, on how positions are valued. So however you choose to look at it, you look at it. But like you said, if there's a guy that we covet, that we really feel like can help our program grow and that can add value to our program, we're going to, try our damnedest to get him signed.
I think Chris Jones counts as somebody that you would covet, that you should try your damnedest to get him signed. And so that was Rand Carthon yesterday on Chase and Joe. I did the math during the math. That's a loose term. I looked up Aaron Donald's contract during the break. Aaron Donald signed that extension after the Super Bowl when the only leverage he had was, I might retire. I've done everything there is to do in the NFL, so I might retire. He wasn't going to retire. He was just making $14 million a year and was like, no, you're going to pay me more. And so what he did was he threatened to retire, and they gave him a contract. 3 years, $95 million, 46.5 guaranteed at signing, but it was pretty much a fully guaranteed deal. So that's $31.6 million a year. Give Jones 32. 32 a year, 4 by 128. What's wrong with that? 3 years guaranteed. Why would you have a problem with that? It's not your money. You've got it. The Titans have the money to spend. And yet, as I, take your calls and you guys are, oh, God, I'd love Chris Jones. Trevor yesterday, oh, yes, Chris Jones. I said to Ian during the break, I said, they're not going to do this. And Ian, you concurred.
Yeah, for the most part.
You concurred that they're not going to do this.
Yeah, it seems like
Why?
Be surprised.
But what's the explanation for not doing this? What's the explanation for not signing Chris Jones? Is it that he's not a good player? Because I think we can all agree that Chris Jones is a very good player.
He's a good player.
Is it that it would be too much money?
Maybe.
You've got the lowest payroll in the NFL. If somebody's going to sign Chris Jones, why not you? All these other teams that would be looking to sign Chris Jones, if they were in the mix for Chris Jones, all these other teams that would be out there are probably paying their quarterback more than you, with the exception of San Francisco, who's going to have to pay their quarterback $1 gazillion next year.
I'm not saying this is the right answer, but they might say some type of positional allocation of payroll when you combine Simmons, Landry, and Jones as far as what you're paying for the defensive line and Arden Key.
Then cut Landry. Go sign some guy after free agency's over who's a pass rusher that gets 6 sacks a year. Go sign him, stick him on the outside, and cut Landry and go sign Chris Jones. And I don't think you have to do either. But if that's going to be the excuse, and I know you're not making an excuse, Ian, but I know you're looking for the excuses that they would make, they all suck. The excuses are terrible. You've got the money. You, the owner, told Mike Keith in the Russian television interview that they did, the state media interview that they did with Amy Adams Strunk, the closest she'll go to a microphone, the friendly microphone, and she said to the fans, we've got all this cap space, so use it. Go get the best player. I don't understand why this is so hard. And yet people are there's no way the Titans are going to sign Chris Jones. Why not? Why not? Why not go get the best player available to stick him with your best player and make your defensive line the best defensive line in the NFL overnight? There's no explanation for you to not do that. If you want to explain to me that I can't draft Malik Neighbors or Roma Dunze because I have to draft the left tackle, fine. I get it. I don't love it, but I get it. But there's no excuse not to at least try to do this. And again, this is where having the money comes in. And it's like, hey, if you want Chris Jones, you're going to have to overpay. They did a behind the scenes with Calais Campbell when he signed his big contract in Jacksonville. And I remember it was Calais Campbell and his agent, and he's got great agents. And in it, he was sitting there with his agent, and Steve Keim was the general manager at the time with the Arizona Cardinals. And Jacksonville's making this huge offer for Calais Campbell. And the agent calls Steve Keim, and he says, I just got off the phone with Steve Keim, the Cardinals agent. Campbell was with the Cardinals. I just got off the phone with Steve Keim. He said he loves you, and he wants the best for you, and he wishes you the best of luck because the Jags outbid him. And that's how they got Calais Campbell. And where did they end up the next year with Calais Campbell? The AFC title game with Blake freaking Bortles as their quarterback. I'm not getting off this. They need to go after Chris Jones. Billy is up next here on our program. Thank you for waiting. What's up, Billy?
Hey, what's up, Jared? Thanks for taking my call. Man, you're on to something here. With Jones and Simmons, you could flip Landry for draft picks. I think you get a second-round pick for Landry. He's got 10 sacks every year.
Why do I have to give up on Landry? Why can't I keep Landry? Why can't I have Landry, Jones, and Simmons?
Well, I mean, that's a lot of money. You're talking, what, $55 million for 2 defensive tackles?
Why do I care about that? I just got rid of a $12 million running back.
Well, I see what you're saying, but, man, don't you want a receiver?
Can I not sign a receiver? I have $32 million to spend this year?
No, you got a lot of money to spend. I just don't think they would do that, all that money allocated to the defensive line.
Well,
you still got you got to find left tackle.
Billy, you own the team. You own it right now. You've got
yes, sir.
Anywhere between $130 million and $150 million, in payroll to be able to spend. Would you say no on this?
No, I wouldn't. No.
So why would they? And so why are we making, Billy, thank you for your call. Why are we making excuses for the Titans to not do the boldest, baddest thing they could do in free agency with all the money that they have been bragging that they have? Why are we making excuses for that? Like, why? We don't need excuses. We need action. That's what we need. And that's the point. It's like, well, I mean, I would love to add Chris Jones, Jared, but if we do that, where are we going to get the money for Hollywood Brown? You want to talk to me about Hollywood Brown when I'm talking about Chris Jones? Oh, my goodness. And that's the point, right? Again, if the Titans have $130 million in cash to spend, which I said last week, the cap is 250-something, 255.4. The Titans' payroll's 119. It's going to be 110 when they cut Andre Dillard and Luke Gifford. If I've got all of this money to spend, why can't I give 32 of it to Chris Jones? Think about this. Simmons has a contract that's going to pay him $17 million next year. So let's say you give Jones 32. So now we're talking about $50 million between Jones and Simmons. And that's a lot, right? Oh, man, 2 DTs for Jones and Simmons. Guess what? The Eagles are paying that to Jalen Hurts. And they still pay their offensive line. And they still pay A.J. Brown. And they still pay their defensive players. And they still pay. So why can the Eagles do it, but you can't? That's the question. One texter texted in, and I had to reply to him during the break. This is Dustin in Nashville. Said, Chris Jones is a stud. If the salary cap is not real, how do you rationalize Kansas City not re-signing him? Simply not wanting to pay the money for an elite defensive lineman? Yes. At least a trade would get them some draft compensation. Well, there is no point in worrying about draft picks when you're competing for and winning the Super Bowl. Like, there's no point in doing it. Like, yes, it's great to talk about, oh, man, if we could just get that second-round pick. But you and I both know that if the Titans were as close as Kansas City is every year, we'd be wanting to deal the second-round pick to get better players. So that's why you don't trade them. But that if they wanted him, they could have signed him. And when you say, oh, no, it's the cap, it's the cap, it's the cap, if they had signed him, it would have lowered the cap number. They just don't want to pay. Which is exactly why they're going to trade L'Jarius Sneed, which is exactly why they traded Tyreek Hill, which is exactly why they don't pay. Kelsey is underpaid. And it's exactly why in the NFLPA survey, Clark Hunt got an F- from the players. Worst in the league. Craig says, here comes the we need to save our money for the new stadium speech from Amy when she doesn't go after Chris Jones. I mean, let me say this. You can't say that. The Titans cannot argue that they need to save their money for the stadium when we're paying $1.2 billion of it. Chris Sanders is next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Texter into the text line. Skylar says, Jeffrey Simmons and Chris Jones together would be unstoppable. We'll learn a lot about Titans ownership, and if they really want to win, no more discount shopping. And Joey Garrison, who used to write for the Tennessean and now covers the Biden White House, I believe, for USA Today, says to me, I just don't see the Titans' two highest paid players both being defensive tackles. They'll conclude the money is better used on other needs, in my opinion. Let me tell you a story before we get to Chris Sanders here. In the 1983 basketball draft, the Portland Trail Blazers held the number 2 pick. And they went to Bob Knight, who was coaching the USA basketball team at the time, and this was before pros could play on the Olympic team. And they said to Bobby Knight, who should we take number 2 overall? Hakeem Olajuwon's going number 1. Who should we take number 2? And he said, you need to take Michael Jordan. And they said, well, Michael Jordan's not a center, though. And Bob Knight looked at him and said, play him at center. The message, get him on the team. Portland probably still regrets that mistake. Chris Sanders joins us now on the program, former Titans receiver. All right, Chris.
What's up, baby?
You caught me on a heater today.
What
L'Jarius needs tagged by the Chiefs, which means Chris Jones can't be. He's going to be a free agent. They're not going to pay him. I want Chris Jones. My team's got the lowest payroll in the NFL. Yeah. Somebody's got to pay him. Why not the Titans?
It's funny because I really agree with you. If you look at Chris Jones, look at his stats. He has 273 tackles, 75 sacks, and 12 forced fumbles. So when you have a guy like that that's not just a player, he's an impact player. And the reason why I kind of agree with you, Jared, is because when he gets into the playoffs, he turns into a totally different monster. And you got him and Jeffrey Simmons, and then I don't know what they're going to do with Autry. It just makes a defense that was good that can be great.
So I actually think the third person in this equation is Landry. And
yes, absolutely.
The way that he played last year at the end of the season after the knee injury makes me think this year we're going to get the Harold Landry back that we've seen in the past. And I don't think Landry's a great player, but I think he's a good player. And so if I've got Simmons and Jones, I think Landry and Key may rack up 10 sacks each just because the other team is going to be so worried about those two guys.
Yeah, that's a great point because you look at the defensive coordinator, Denard Wilson. He said things like this: we want an attacking defense and we want a blitz. Look at those guys that we're talking about. We're talking about Simmons, we're talking about Jones, and we're talking about Landry. You went from a defense that was pretty good up front when Simmons was out, but now you got a defense that's fast in key spots. So now we always talk about that this is a pass-happy pass-happy league. The quarterbacks, throw the ball up and down the field, but you can't throw the ball when you're looking upside down because you're consistently getting pressured. So if you have three guys like that are impact players, I know you say Landry's not an impact player, but he gets sacks. But if you have those guys out there, you're going to make some quarterbacks very, very nervous.
So to this point, Chris Sanders.
Sure.
Do you think the Titans will do this?
I don't know. The reason why I don't know is because, there's a lot of needs that the Tennessee Titans need to address. We got the offensive line. We don't know what they're going to do in free agency. We got the secondary also, and then you got, if Derrick Henry's not here, you got to get some running backs that's in free agent-wise, and some of the guys that are out there like Gus Edwards, A.J. Dillon, or Deontay Foreman, who I really, really love. So
I can pay those guys $1 million. I'm not worried about that. You know what I mean? We're talking about big-ticket spending on Chris Jones.
Right, but I'm just saying, if you look at the track record of the Tennessee Titans, they never make a splash in free agent-wise. So, I think this is a great time because if you look at the cap money, I know you hate the cap and you don't believe in the cap, but at the end of the day, Jared, they're going to have to get not just some players and I'm being respectful when I say this, don't get guys like Dillard and, Brunskill. Those guys are okay, but you got to have some guys that actually impact the game. And if you look at Chris Jones, when he's in a game, but when he gets in the playoffs, he consistently is a disruptor.
So I have a theory on this, Chris, which is if they sign Chris Jones, that would be one of the best things that they could do for Will Levis because it would take pressure off of Levis to have to win games on the offensive side of the ball. And I don't think fans understand how much the confidence of just winning would mean for the young quarterback. So if they get him a defense that is as dominant as it can be, because Sauce Gardner and Darrelle Revis are not on the free agent market, so they can't go get Deion Sanders at corner, but they can get Chris Jones. If they've got a great defense, I think that would do wonders for Levis because he wouldn't be asked to do so much to win games, and fans look at quarterbacks, and fair or unfairly, they put winning and losing on the quarterback, and this would help Levis.
Yeah, absolutely, because the thing about it is if he made a mistake, if we do an interception to cause a fumble, he understands that the defense is going to pull him out of the situation. I know we're talking about that at help Levis, but I believe there's another guy that will actually be helping this situation is Simmons. Simmons is who you going to double team? You can't double team, two guys. But the thing about it is if you have one guy that's getting double teamed and then the other guy not, then that guy can make some plays, and that's how he's going to make Simmons and Will Levis better because he's an impact player. I just love what he does, and I just watched him, in the playoffs. What he does, he consistently, takes over the game, and he impacts the game. And that's kind of the guys that the Tennessee Titans need on this roster.
So with that being said, because you brought up Simmons, Ian and I were chatting about this during the break. Simmons makes $17 million. Now, technically it was like $24 million a year, but it was less than that because they didn't factor in the fifth-year option that Simmons was under in the deal. And so he's making $17 million in cash this year. Do you think Simmons could live with him making $20 million a year and Jones making $32 million a year?
Yeah, the reason why I say this is because, just looking at Simmons, we always say this, he's not a me guy. I mean, yes, he's going to make his money. Yes, he wants to get paid. But at the end of the day, if you make a lot of money and don't win the championships, it actually means nothing. So, even though Chris Jones will be making more money than him, but at the end of the day, the kind of guy that Simmons is, the kind of man that he is, and the team player that he is, I don't think he'll be upset. But now, if he goes and get like 17, 18 sacks, now we got to bring this thing right back to the table because he's one of those impact players.
I will cross that bridge when I get to it. If I get Chris Jones and Simmons together and Simmons sacks quarterback 17 times next year and the Titans are good, I will live with the ramifications of having to deal with that. So I normally don't do this because I think this is like lazy on a radio host job, but you ran into my heater on the Chris Jones front. And so I've asked you about 6 questions on Chris Jones. Titans spoke yesterday, the coach, the general manager. What did you take away from it? Was there anything that stood out to you about what you heard yesterday that you'd like to share with us?
Oh, man, I loved it. Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan, this is what they said, and I almost jumped out of my seat because they were both on the same page. They said this. They said they want to improve team speed, and they want to add playmakers. I mean that's exactly what you need. And when you have your general manager, your head coach speaking the same language, that means when they're going into the draft, when they're going into free agency, they're actually on the same page. They got to get some playmakers at wide receivers. They got to get some speed on the outside because if you look at this Tennessee Titans roster, DeAndre Hopkins has decent speed, but if you look at after that, what guy's going to scare you with some speed? Because if you look at the Cincinnati Bengals, you got Jamar Chase, you got T. Higgins, you got Boyd. Those guys can run. They take the top.
Boyd can't. Boyd cannot.
What?
Boyd had 5 targets last year of over 20 yards.
But that ain't got nothing to do with him running.
5. You in 2000, you had 6 catches of over 35 yards.
But
he
you know
ran.
why?
He had 5 targets.
Jared, who did
he
have
had
on the
9
outside?
targets the year before. They don't throw the ball down the field to him.
Jared, who did they have on the other side? They had T. Higgins and they had Jamar Chase. You're not gonna get too many balls. What if he gets in a system to where the OC Holtz says, okay, you know what? I got to figure out a way to get this kid the ball because he takes the top out the defense. He gets a fresh new start. So I understand he got 5 or 6 balls in Cincinnati, but he still has the potential to take the top out the defense, Mr. Jarrett.
He can't run.
Oh my God!
Like Hollywood Brown's not as good as Boyd in terms of catching the ball.
He's little, yeah.
But Hollywood Brown can run. And I'm not saying that I want Hollywood Brown. Like, he's in the mix. I don't necessarily, want him. But, again, hold on. I got it right here in front of me. Last year, Gabe Davis of Buffalo had 25 targets of over 20 yards. Calvin Ridley in Jacksonville had 32 targets. Hollywood Brown in 14 games had 21 targets. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm talking about. and Boyd's only getting 5, and he got 9 the year before. They're not throwing the ball deep to him. And so I'm not going to Brian Callahan comes from an offense where they're not throwing the ball deep to that guy, and so then I'm going to sign him over here and tell him to go deep? No. I need a guy who can run opposite DeAndre.
Yeah, and I agree with you 100%. I mean, but if you look at, even if they don't sign Tyler Boyd, and I think that's a great observation of what you said, but just like what they talked about Ryan Carthon and Brian Callahan, they said this. They said in the draft there's guys that have a lot of talent. There's a lot of guys can run. I mean, look at some of the guys that can run in this draft. You got Neighbors that can run. You got a Dunn from Washington that can run. You got the guy who I really, really love, Franklin from Oregon, Georgia, McConkey. Those guys can run. So even if you don't get a Tyler Boyd or get a guy with some speed and free agency or whatever they are, you still got a rich, talent of receivers that can run in the draft, so they're going to be good any which way.
So I know one impact player the Titans can get if they're looking for impact players.
Chris Jones.
Chris Jones. That's right. Chris Sanders, as always, joining us on the program. Chris, great stuff. Appreciate you. We'll talk soon.
Appreciate you, brother. Bye-bye.
Yep. Chris Sanders, as always, on the program. So Chris is in, right? Trevor yesterday, yes. He says, if you can do it, do it. Get Chris Jones in here. Chris today, I am waiting for pushback. I am waiting for somebody to say, Jared, the Titans cannot do this. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Coming up next, we'll get to your phones because I have kind of ignored them. I mean, not ignored them. We've taken phones, but not enough. So we'll do that on this because there's one thing that you guys keep saying, and I'm not going to disagree with you, but this is the opportunity for us to be wrong. Well, I should say you, not me, because I don't necessarily believe this. For you all to be wrong, and you will love it. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025, 1025, 1063 the game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. I'm on a heater today. You know, we had on the grid Predators at 3 o'clock winning 6 in a row, and you bet your sweet fanny I'm excited about the Predators. So we're not, I started the show saying we'll get to them at 3 o'clock. We're going to push it down. We're not going to forget about the Predators today because they're kicking ass. But I am on a heater on the Chris Jones front. I have not thought much about the Titans and Chris Jones, and then all of a sudden yesterday it came out that L'Jarius Sneed was getting the franchise tag from the Chiefs. In fact, I thought the Chiefs might tag Chris Jones, even though it would have been an astronomical figure, just to force him at the negotiating table, or even turn around and trade him. And they didn't. They tagged Sneed. And so that means Chris Jones will be a free agent. He is the number one free agent available by almost every metric. And yet, I haven't met anybody who's against this. Trevor Maddich on the show yesterday, he said, yes, absolutely, do it. Chris Sanders, just now, last segment, yes, absolutely do it. So when Chris calls up and waits to go on the show, and I only learned this recently, he asks Ian what we've been talking about. And so, Ian, you told Chris that we had been talking about Chris Jones and how I wanted him on the Titans.
Mm-hmm.
And so he knew what he was walking into. And because of that, I thought there was a chance that Chris was going to throw up the stop sign at third base and say, whoa, 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 no on Chris Jones. And he wants Chris Jones. And the only sentiment that I see with your phones and your texts and everything else, we had the one guy call in last hour, and he was like, Jared, I like the idea of doing it, but I don't think they're going to spend all the money on it. I'm like, why not? And then I got Chris Sanders in the last segment sitting there talking to me about, well, they got other needs and they might want to sign Gus Edwards at running back or Deontay Foreman. So I'm not allowed to have Chris Jones because of Gus Edwards? What are we talking about here? But the sentiment that exists in the text line, your phones, everything else, and I'm not 100% against you on this. I'm not in agreement with it. I'm not co-signing it. I'm not endorsing it. But the sentiment is the Titans are too cheap to do this. That's the sentiment. Sometimes the truth hurts, and I'm just going to be as blunt as possible. You, the fans, for the most part, via your texts, are telling me, and your calls, and Twitter, you are telling me that you don't think she'll do this. You're not telling me you don't want to do it. You're telling me you don't think they'll do it because they're cheap. They have the lowest payroll in the NFL. Now, I don't subscribe to the theory that Amy Adams-Strunk is a complete and total cheap ass. I don't buy that. And I pushed back on that when the Titans traded A.J. Brown, and all the talk was Amy's cheap, and they didn't want to pay A.J., and this is why they didn't. And I pushed back on that because the Titans had a top 5 payroll in the NFL in 2021. And I'm like, she spent the money. And they said they were trying to get a deal done with A.J., and that A.J.'s actions forced them to decide, hey, we're going to do this. And in fairness to her, regardless of whether or not it was responsible with how she did it, she fired her GM and coach, and she got to pay them a boatload of money. So I don't subscribe to that, but you guys do. For instance, Andrew texts into the text line, quote, screw the Titans. They want $6,000 a year for my 2 club-level tickets so I can watch Nick Westbrook-Akine, Janoris Jenkins, and Daniel Brunskill. Screw that. Well, we don't know that. We don't know that they don't want to go out and get Chris Jones. So let me say this when it comes to Amy. Because last week I had a topic where I wasn't really talking to the fans. I was talking to Candace Lee. If she really wants to bring Jerry Stackhouse back, like, we all have choices to make, but that's a bad choice. So let me say this to Amy when it comes to the Titans and spending and everything else. When you hear people call in and say, oh, the owner's too cheap, or I read off a text, or we discuss, again, the narrative is you're too cheap. It might not be true. I don't know. Don't get mad at me, because I'm just telling you what everybody else is saying. If you want to change that, signing Chris Jones will do that. If you want to change that, every time she fires somebody, she says, I want our fans to know I will do whatever it takes to win a championship. And I don't disagree with that. I think she does want to win a championship. Signing Chris Jones would show your fans you're willing to do that. If you're going to go to these fans and you're going to tell these fans, hey, we want $30,000 for this PSL, and I don't know what they're going to be. But I'm just saying, if you're going to do that, these fans need to know you're as in it to win it as they are. And instead of getting mad at me and saying, well, Jared, that's not fair. We spent that money on Jeffrey Simmons. We had a top 5 payroll in 21. We spent money on this. We spent money on that. We invested here. We've spent all this money off the field on our facility. And instead of getting mad at me, because I'm not the one who believes it, but I'm just telling you that's what everybody else thinks. Maybe you could do something about it. And that's where Chris Jones comes into play. So as a Titan fan, you don't have to make excuses for the Titans not signing a player that by all accounts they should be in on. He's the best free agent on the market. He's a great player. He plays a premium position. He would fill a void on your team. I mean, you replacing Danico Autry, who is a very good player. You replacing Danico Autry with Chris Jones would be like replacing Alonzo Mourning with Shaquille O'Neal. Like, that's what you're talking about. You're talking about going big and going home. This is your chance. You don't need to make an excuse for why the Titans shouldn't do this. You can still sign a left tackle. Again, your payroll is $119 million according to Spot Track today. And that is before you release Andre Dillard and Luke Gifford, which would take it to $110 million. Cleveland has apparently, according to Spot Track, they've got a payroll of $260 million. The difference between you and Cleveland is about $150 million. You can't give 32 of that to Chris Jones. So don't get mad at me. But your fans think you're cheap. And I fought against it when you traded A.J. Brown, and again, I'll fight against it. I don't completely believe that to be the case. But we are giving you $1.2 billion to break ground on that stadium on Thursday. So you know what? If you want to change the narrative about you can do something about it, and it's Chris Jones. 615-737-1025. We'll write to your phones on this next. 615-737-1025. Again, I want Chris Jones. And there may not be any talking me out of this. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Let's talk about Twice Daily. That's right. I absolutely love Twice Daily. I was there yesterday. I mean, I'm pretty much there all the time. Twice Daily has your cravings. And you can be like me. You can download the Twice Daily app so that when you're on the go, you just put in the order, stop by Twice Daily. It'll be right there ready for you. Pick it up on your way. But try their new wraps. They've got Italian ham and cheddar, turkey and Swiss, and Nashville hot chicken. And they're made to order with your favorite toppings. You can download the Twice Daily app to order ahead like I do, and they got snacks. Twice Daily, it's snack time all the time, and they've got your favorites like chicken fingers, tater rounds, and the new pretzels. Salted, garlic parmesan, and cinnamon sugar. That's right. How incredible is that? Twice Daily's got it made to order. Download the Twice Daily app and join the loyalty program to unlock special discounts, savings, and so much more. If you're looking for convenience, Twice Daily has you covered. Twice Daily, fresh all day.
When you get to the Super Bowl, it's hard for you guys to get even time off to recharge, but you have a lot of very important decisions to make this offseason, and Brett has done a phenomenal job, especially drafting on the defensive side of the ball. But you got two critical pieces on the defensive side of Chris Jones and Ladarius Sneed. So how do you make that decision on franchise or who you're going to keep, or you try to keep both? What are those meetings like?
Yeah, so you know how this goes. You want to keep all the good guys.
Yeah.
And we're lucky to have some really good guys. Virtually impossible to keep them all. We're lucky that we only have two that are, just major guys, and those two. We'll give it our best shot. We're not gonna. We want the guys to be there, and I think it's important that everybody knows that. I mean, that's when we come into it, we're going to come after you, and if it fits the bill, then let's go and let's move on and go win a couple games here. So, but with the restrictions, you got to be smart with it too.
Andy Reid yesterday at the Combine talking on CBS about, I'd love to keep him, but I just don't know. And let me say this. Clark Hunt in the latest NFLPA survey, where the players get to, we hate the fact, like the Titans players always hate the fact that the players don't sit in first class. And so they get mad about that, and they downgrade the Titans on that. Amy, I think, got a B-, or a B as far as the players were concerned. Very good. Congratulations to her. Clark Hunt got an F-. Why? Because he's cheap. Same reason they don't have Tyreek Hill. He's cheap. And that's why, again, they've almost, they really forced Chris Jones to watch the first game last year from the box. They're cheap. So they're not going to be able to keep Chris Jones. He's a real free agent. You can sign him. Justin in Greenbrier texts into the text line, and our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. It says, Jared, and this is a very well thought out, heartfelt text in my opinion. He says, Jared, I feel like we as Titans fans have just not seen the Titans historically go after this kind of player. The times when the Titans have gone after players that were supposed to be game changers, they have underperformed or just flat out failed. Example, any aging wide receiver the Titans have picked up. I also feel like the Titans have gotten the cheap tag, and we as fans are just not willing to get our hopes up. Let's talk about the cheap tag. Do you believe the Titans are cheap or not? I do not think the Titans are cheap. Ian, do you think the Titans are cheap?
Sometimes, kind of, yeah.
There is an argument to be made that they are. I'm not going to jump on that. And you guys know me, I'm a straight shooter. So if I thought it, I'd say it. But I understand how a lot of you people feel that way.
Although they have been spending some money on the facility, upgrading all that kind of stuff.
Yay.
And but, I mean, that is money to spend, even though it's not on the payroll, but you have to spend it.
That's not like the $125 million for A.J. Brown. That's kind of the difference.
Mm-hmm.
And so if Amy's cheap, then she's cheap. They're not going to sell any of those PSLs, and the fans, it's going to be bad. Like, I'm just going to tell you, if Titans ownership, with all this cap space, if Titans ownership goes into this and they don't spend any money, and they try to act like they're the smartest people in the room because their analytics say, well, Chris Jones isn't worth $32 million. He's only worth $24 million, our analytics. So we decided to sign Johnny Joe for $6 million, and he sucks, and now your team sucks. Like, it's not going to go well around here. But on the front end about, we as Titan fans, we've gone after these guys, and we just haven't. How many free agents, not trades, right? Julio Jones was a trade. How many high-end free agents have the Titans brought in that have just completely and totally bombed? In fact, off the top of my head, the last time the Titans made a day one free agent signing on a first ballot Hall of Famer, or I guess Kevin Mawai wasn't a first ballot Hall of Famer, but on a Hall of Famer, it was Kevin Mawai. And Kevin Mawai was towards the end of his career, and Kevin Mawai was awesome. Right? This isn't Andre Johnson, where you sign him a week before training camp because he's 37 years old and he's coming off of down years. Chris Jones is not coming off of a down year. Chris Jones missed all of training camp, sat up in the box for the first game, and still, 10 sacks, and he did that huge celebration because he got an extra $1 million for the 10th sack? He can play. Like, even Chris Sanders is like, hey, I like him. But come those playoff games, I mean, in those big playoff games, I just go through the roof watching him play. And I agree because I do too. I see Chris Jones play in the regular season, and some of you might not like this, but I'm fine with it. I see Chris Jones play in the regular season, and I'm like, he's a good player. I watch him play in the postseason, and I'm like, he's one of the best defensive players this century. That's how good he is in the playoffs, which means he can turn it on and turn it off. Lawrence Taylor was the same way. Belichick used to talk about Lawrence Taylor. I was watching a documentary where he was talking about LT, and he said the thing about Lawrence was he didn't give it his all on every snap. But if there was a big third down in the fourth quarter, you bet your ass Lawrence Taylor found his way in that backfield. And Chris Jones is the same way. So this isn't the same as adding Eric Moulds at the end of his career. This is different. And I understand not wanting to get your hopes up because as a Titan fan, the Titans very rarely go out and make the bold move. But do you want to be like everybody else or do you want to be bold? And so I understand, oh man, it didn't work with Julio Jones. Julio Jones was 31 years old coming off of a hamstring injury and had a down season. Chris Jones is the second best player on the team that just won the Super Bowl. Texter says the Titans aren't cheap. They're dumb. They would rather have 7 Scarbinis instead of 1 superstar. And there may be some truth to that. That one I don't like. Texter says the 2021 payroll was the 5th highest in the league because they rostered 140 players because of all the injuries. Amy Adams Strunk is going to raise the price of beer $5 just to cover the dead cap money because she's that cheap. I don't buy that. The narrative is that the Titans are so cheap, other than the A.J. Brown trade, which, again, I don't even think was financially driven. I think they were really mad about the way A.J. was acting. I think Tory Dandy, the agent, ran a masterclass on John Robinson, Amy Adams Strunk, and the entire Titans organization with how he convinced A.J. Brown to treat the Titans, which led to a contract that was much higher than the contract that A.J. really wanted to sign with the Titans. And that's just good agenting by Tory Dandy. So, I mean, other than that, what is an example of them just being so cheap? I mean, last year, yes, in free agency, but they didn't know as a team what they were going to be. Right? They were, we need to rebuild. We need to not. He's in charge. He's in charge. And that's how you end up drafting a guard with the 11th overall pick. And don't even get me started, by the way, on this idea that now I can't have Malik Neighbors because I had to draft the guard last year with the 11th overall pick. But I'll probably get to that at some point. One texter says, this just isn't something the Titans do. Both Simmons and Jones are from Mississippi and both played at Mississippi State, so I'm sure that Big Jeff would be all for it. The Titans won't do it, though, because they don't go big. Isn't this supposed to be a new era? I mean, isn't the idea that you fire everybody, fire John Robinson, fire Mike Vrabel, fire all their coaches, fire all their disciples, go ahead and invest in analytics and do things. This is the new way. I mean, everybody's trying to convince me that Rand Carthon's first year as general manager doesn't count, right? Everybody's like, oh, no, that was Vrabel's fault. That's this. Oh, no, I don't do this, Jared. I don't. Rand didn't pick that guard 11th. Rand didn't sign Andre Dillard. That was all Vrabel's fault. So if this is a new era, shouldn't the Titans do things differently than they've done in the past? And what's my favorite thing about all your texts is there's no text in here that's like, this is a stupid idea, Jared. The Titans shouldn't do this. It's all, oh, Jared, I'd love it, but they won't do it. Why not? They have the lowest payroll in the NFL. Somebody has to pay Chris Jones, right? There are only 32 teams. You all believe that there's a salary cap that keeps teams from spending a bunch of money. So if that's the case, and you have the lowest payroll, and you have the least amount or the most amount of cap space, why can't you sign this guy? Matt in Nashville says, Jared, I love this idea. Chris Jones, Lloyd Cushenberry, Geno Stone, and Chidobe Awuzie, and then an all-offensive draft for the second year in a row. And here's the other thing, too. Once you do that, and I'm totally fine with, again, you got to get a center. I think you have to get a tackle, and you probably have to get a guard. So you're probably going to have to overpay for Jonah Williams. It just is what it is. Awuzie, you have to add a corner. After you do all of that, there will be guys. Week 3 of free agency, right before the draft, that are like, you know what, I'll take 1 year, $4 million because I got to get on the team. That will happen. And so you can add those guys in later. Like, you don't have to sign the second running back to go with Spears. You don't have to sign him on day 1 of free agency. You can wait. You have to sign Chris Jones on day 1. One texter says, what about Clowney? Clowney was a big-time signing, we were told. First of all, Ian, who was the number 1 opponent of signing Jadeveon Clowney?
Oh, I think we were up there.
I mean, Jared and the GM
were
against signing Jadeveon Clowney, and you guys know the GM never, ever tried to farm the Titans' land. And we were both against it. Secondly, Clowney wasn't top of the market. Clowney was a guy that everybody thought was going to get a fortune in free agency, and nobody wanted to pay him. Chris Jones isn't that. Chris Jones is good. Clowney is, I'm telling you he's good. Jones was, we've all seen the games. We know that Chris Jones is a baller. One texter says, just like you want Rand to prove it to you, we want the Titans to prove it to us before we believe that they would do something like that. Well, should have told your Metro Council members not to vote for that stadium if that were the case, because, well, they kind of got what they wanted, but I hear you. It's a very fair point. I'm just telling you guys, I don't have any problem with this, and I sit in the same seat you guys do. I don't think they're going to do it. I think that if I walked into their suite in Indianapolis, and I do laugh, I laugh so hard, like, well, we'll get to that next. 615-737-1025 and more of your phones. 615-737-1025 here on the program. Hey, tune into 94.9 The Fan tomorrow night as Vanderbilt basketball takes on Missouri on the road. Pregame 6:45. Tip-off at 7. Jake's got the coverage, and it's also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at 949thefan.com. And also Vandy baseball today takes on Evansville at Hawkins Field. There you go. Pre-game at 4:15, first pitch is at 4:30. Coverage is also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at 949thefan.com. Jones and Simmons, can they coexist? And if they can coexist, how dominant can they be?
Yes, they can coexist. I'm sure they would love to coexist because they would complement each other. You can't really double team both of them. And I think that if the Titans were able to do that, it would be phenomenal. Jared, if you were to start an expansion team right now, what would be the 3 position groups that you would prioritize?
Quarterback, receiver, and pass rusher.
See, I'd take quarterback, pass rusher, and D-line, and then offensive line.
Sure.
And if you are dominant on that defensive line, it just makes everything better. And for Jones, if they're able to swing it financially with the cap, then if they were able to get him here, it would be astonishing for this team. And it would make up for a whole lot of other problems at linebacker and secondary level.
That was Trevor on the show yesterday. He's in. Chris Sanders is in. Chris Jones to the Titans. I'm going to bang this drum as loud as possible. The Titans do not have an excuse to not sign Chris Jones. Ian, does JC in Goodlettsville ever call in, or is he just a texter?
Probably mostly text.
Okay, so like you wouldn't, if he called in, you wouldn't recognize JC in Goodlettsville calling.
Probably not.
Okay, so JC in Goodlettsville texted in, and he said, just said last week that Chris Jones will not leave Kansas City. Bet the farm, you said. Ignore it. Now it's sign him. So is he saying that he told us that Chris Jones won't leave Kansas City, or is he saying that he told us last week that Chris Jones was going to be available, the Titans should sign him, that I ignored it because I said bet the farm he'll be with Kansas City, and now I'm flip-flopping and want to sign him?
Good question.
Well, I just went through all of his texts from the last week, and I do not see a single text about Chris Jones. And I'm all the way back at February 13th, where he said, Joe is so right. Dan Marino's arm and lightning release with Rice and Taylor would have been 5 to 8 rings. Marino made 5'10" receivers look like all pros.
That's when Joe was trashing Joe Montana.
Okay, Joe. So,
Steve Young's
JC,
better.
I don't know what you're talking about. What's changed all of this is that the Chiefs have placed the tag on L'Jarius Sneed. Once you place the tag on L'Jarius Sneed, you can't place it on Chris Jones. That's what the difference is here. And I think this is what I was going to tell you, but I forgot. I said that there was something I was going to get to on the other side, and then Ian and I were talking about other stuff during the break, so I forgot. So I apologize for that. But if I went to Indianapolis and the Titans were having their meetings, which will be late at night, like in all seriousness, they may not even have them because they may be out at the bar tonight talking to the agents and not tampering, but, checking in. But if they had a little huddle-up discussion, and I walked in and, knocked on the door, and they opened it, and they said, all right, Jared, what do you want? I said, guys, here's the deal. Chad, you got your analytics computer out? Okay, thank you. Rand, I just want you to collaborate with me on this. Chris Jones, 4 years, $128, guarantee the first 3, $32 million a season, top of the market money. For some reason, I think they would laugh me out of that room. I don't have any proof that they would do that, but I think they would. Because I think they think they're smarter than everybody else. So I am with you guys when it's like, I don't think this is going to happen. But I'm not going to stop banging the drum thinking that it should. And let me say this. I use the word entitled a lot. Normally, entitled is a bad thing. Oh, he's entitled. Jerry Stackhouse showed up at Vanderbilt, and he thought he was entitled to be treated with respect as if he was Mike Krzyzewski. That's a bad thing. But we as fans of the Titans that have paid $1.2 billion for this new stadium that they are going to make a buttload of money from, we are entitled to the Titans trying to get good players. And this is the best player available. Even Trevor likes it. Even Chris Sanders likes it. And I thought for sure Chris Sanders was going to put his foot down when he came on the show. And he was going to say, no, can't do that. Speedy from Portland says, I absolutely love the idea of Jones and Simmons on the Titans. historically speaking, the Titans haven't ever been big players in free agency. DeAndre Hopkins is probably their biggest splash in the last 5 years. And that and Rand's comments about spending wisely and waiting to see what's around in June or July leave me to be pessimistic. Speedy, let me tell you this. You're allowed to be pessimistic. You are allowed to say, I do not think, because I heard Rand Carthon yesterday talk about spending wisely and operation costs and everything else. And I thought that was more of a disclaimer, right? The Titans aren't going to come out and say, we're going to be the biggest spenders in free agency, because then every conversation that they have over at Shula's Steakhouse tonight with agents will be, well, let me tell you something now about all this right here and all the money and everything else. We're talking to Dallas for $10 million. We're going to talk to you for $14. So I think that's kind of the protection there. If you're right and I'm wrong, and the Titans are truly thinking about what they can add in June and July, then that's fine. Because this $128 million of Amy's money that I want to spend on Chris Jones, they won't be spending, and somebody else will, because they'll be fired. I mean, there is no doubt. Rand said it yesterday when Chase asked him about criticism. And Rand said, hey, I ignore the noise. I don't listen to any of that, because if I don't go out and get good football players, I won't be here anyways. He's right. And if they don't spend Amy's money this year because they're going to try to be the smartest guys in the room, which I'm not accusing them of, but if that were the case, that's fine. Somebody else will just spend it. But it won't be them. One texter says, you talk about the Titans having the lowest payroll and the most cap money, but they also have the most dead cap money in the league. Yeah, Russell Wilson is going to be released by Denver. That will be almost double the amount of money that the Titans have. Dead cap charges. Oh, Jared, it's so bad. As if you can't just, go out and redo somebody's contract and make up for it. But who am I? I'm just some plebeian. One texter says, a near top-flight defense is a good way to continue to compete in the AFC South until the Titans' offense comes around in a year or two, especially when the other three teams have respectable quarterbacks. I say do it. That comes from C in Franklin. There's not one person that has said, do not do this, Jared. Chris Jones to the Titans is a bad idea. One texter says, why in the hell would Chris Jones come here? Ian, why would Chris Jones?
Money.
Thank you. Chris Jones only cares about the money. That's it. Oh, well, he wants to win a Super Bowl. He sat out the first game of the season because he didn't want to play until he got a new contract. He only cares about the money. He's one of these players like Darrelle Revis, and that's not a bad thing, by the way. It is not a bad thing if they only care about the money. Let's think about it like this. You hire a babysitter to watch your child, and the only reason the babysitter is watching your child is because they care about the money. So when you talk to the babysitter, Ian, how much does a babysitter cost? I don't know. I don't have kids.
I don't know, $20 an hour?
Okay. You're talking to a babysitter who's like, look, man, it's going to be $30 an hour. But they're the best babysitter. Your kids love them. They respect them. You can leave the house. You can go on vacation. Do whatever you want. You're going to pay $30 an hour, but your kids are going to be taken care of. That babysitter's only doing it for the money. Doesn't matter. Your kids are in good hands. Same with this. There are some players in the league. Darrelle Revis is a great example of this. There are some players in the league who do not give a rat's ass about who they're playing for, what city they're in, they don't care about any of that. Give me the money. Did you give me the money? Did the check clear? All right. 6 sacks. So when you ask why would Chris Jones come here, ask yourself, why do you do your job? I mean, I was talking with somebody about this a couple weeks ago, right? And I was thinking about my life. I'm going to share a personal story here. One of these days, somebody might come to me. Again, I don't want to sound conceited. I think I'm pretty good on the radio. And somebody might come to me one day, and the guys at the top of Mad Dog Radio are making millions of dollars a year. And if they came to me and they said, Jared, we want to pay you $1 million a year to be on Sirius XM radio. Or we want to pay you $1 million a year to be on ESPN radio. Or we want to pay you, Colin Cowherd makes $6 million. We want to pay you to be Colin Cowherd. If that happened, Ian, if I went to Sean Ford, our general manager, or I went to Bud Walters, the man who owns this station, and I said, hey, they've offered me $6 million to go work for Fox, what do you think they'd say?
Best of luck to you.
They'd say, we love you, man. Congratulations. We love you. But that is, and that might happen one day. I don't know. There's no way for me to be able to tell you if it is or if it isn't. I don't try for these things. I just try to put out a good show every day, and I figure that whatever happens, happens. But no matter how much money I make, I think that I will always think back to doing afternoon drive in my own town, and I can just foresee me saying, hey, I took this job. I had to for my family, for everything else, and I love it. You know, I love doing this job on ESPN radio and talking about the Cowboys every day and LeBron and whatever. But it's not the same as doing drive time in Nashville when the Titans were going to the AFC Championship game or the Predators were going to the Cup final or I was working with Floyd Reese or all of those things. And that has nothing to do with the money. But at the end of the day, sometimes you got to do what the money tells you to do. If the Chiefs aren't going to give Chris Jones the money, I'm sure he loves competing for the Super Bowl. But he wants the money. That's what this is about. He wants the money. More of your phones. 615-737-1025 is the phone number if you want to weigh in. 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company. Let's talk about White Bison. That's right. I love White Bison. White Bison is my local coffee shop, and it should be yours as well. Stay warm and cozy with their new honey-based drinks, especially now that it's getting cold again outside. I mean, what are we talking about? We got the cinnamon beehive latte and the iced honey nut macchiato, the vanilla rooibos tea latte. And White Bison is your local coffee shop with food featuring fresh-made premium breakfast, lunch, and snack options. Download the White Bison Twice Daily app, just like I have, and you can go ahead and enroll in the rewards program and place orders on the go anytime and automatically earn on every purchase. And, of course, you can download the app and order ahead. It's great. Just do whatever you want. Earn rewards. Get one free coffee every time you buy 7. That's part of White Bison's rewards. Buy 7, get 1 free. White Bison and Twice Daily, fresh all day.
It's a lot of cap space. I know that's what everyone is talking about, and how much we have, but we have to spend wisely. We don't want to just load up and just go, and spend money. Again, we're trying to build a long-term, consistent thing, and you can't do that spending all $90 million out front. We got to be patient. We got to position ourselves that there are going to be guys that come free in June and July, like when we got D-Hop, that we have to have the space for and be able to afford it. And plus, we have to have money for operating costs moving forward throughout the fall, which I think for most of the season we were in the top 5 and having space available. So. We plan to be active, but we're going to be patient and let everything come to us.
We're going to put up a banner. 2023 Titans, top 5 in cap space available during the year. Congratulations, Duran Carthon, Chad Brinker, and Anthony Robinson. Boys, you guys really did a great job. And don't forget Mike Vrabel. He was the one calling the shots, according to revisionist history, that allowed them to be able to do that. It does remind me of a joke that Floyd used to tell him. I don't know if it was a joke or not. He used to tell me that the way it would work is the Bengals every year would be like $5 million under the cap. And if the Bengals were $5 million or $2 million or whatever it would be, they would go to each one of the members of the Brown family and say, okay, here's $1 million for you, $1 million for you, $1 million for you. Like, that's what that is. You can't say, we got cap space all year long, since October. And then when it comes time to pay the piper, say, oh, no, we got to be careful. We got to be able to sign guys in July. Most teams don't do that. One texter says, I hope I'm wrong, but I don't see the Titans signing a big-name free agent. Instead, the Titans will get 10 Scarbinis, followed by another Titans podcast, where Chad Brinker tries to mansplain the salary cap and analytics to us with an I'm smarter than you tone and I have a nicer watch than you. Let me just say this. I am not of the belief that the Titans can walk out of free agency without making some sort of a splash, regardless of whether or not it's Chris Jones, which is what I've been pumping all day, every day. I think Chris Jones, it's like we can get a bunch of mediocre tackles and receivers, and that will help Levis. Like, it will be better for Will Levis to have Jonah Williams at right tackle than it will be to have Dylan Radins at right tackle. But it won't help Will Levis as much as having a dominant defense with Chris Jones and Jeffrey Simmons on it, and then Levis only having the pressure to go out and score 16, 17 points a game, as opposed to asking him to win a shootout. That will have a significant effect on Levis. That will make him a better player over the long haul. But even if it's not Chris Jones, I cannot imagine the Titans walking out of free agency with Jonah Williams, Azeez Al-Shaair. Where's my little sheet here with all the Pro Football Focus? Okay, at wide receiver, Kendrick Bourne and Curtis Samuel. There you go. We're done there. At tackle, Jermaine Illuminor. Done there. 2 years, $9 million guaranteed. According to Pro Football Focus, that's his market. Corner, Steven Nelson, 2 years and 14 and a half. Keshawn Nixon from the Packers. We're good there at corner. Center, to bring back Aaron Brewer. No problems there. Let's see. Guard, nope, we're good with Daniel Brunskill. Don't need to sign a guard, even though there's a ton of guards out there in the market. And inside backer, you're going to bring back Azeez Al-Shaair, and you're going to sign Drew Tranquill. And you're done. Resign Kayvon Wallace, Nick Folk. You're good. They can't do that. If they do that, the fans will go crazy. And the fans should go crazy. So I'm sorry. But there's no way to me that you can't do that. One texter says, all that money for a player that only plays hard in the big games. The Titans aren't close to big games. No need for a player like that. What do you mean the Titans aren't close to big games?
I thought about that. Well, the Titans have to make the playoffs for Jones to prove his worth.
Who won the AFC South last year?
Houston.
Do you think they were close to making the playoffs this time last year?
Probably not, no.
Who won the AFC South the year before?
Jacksonville.
Did you think they were close to making the playoffs when they had the number 1 pick?
Probably not.
And you know what those two teams both did?
Spent money.
Yep. Remember that Christian Kirk deal everybody killed Jacksonville on? That's been a great contract for them. Oh, my God. Some of you texters. As crazy as this sounds, Texter, this sounds crazy. Like, I'm just going to tell you right now. As crazy as this sounds, I'd rather trade for L'Jarius Sneed and keep Danico Autry than have two massive contracts in the interior defensive line as well as a big contract with Landry. So you'd rather give Autry a contract that's not as big as Jones, and you'd rather give L'Jarius Sneed a big contract and trade a draft choice, because that's what you have to do. He's franchise tagged. So you're going to trade a draft choice. So you're going to trade the 38th pick, and you're going to give Sneed the money, and you're going to bring back an Autry, who is a good player. Jones is a Hall of Famer, and I believe Autry is older than Jones. And so you're going to do that just because you don't want to sign Chris Jones? Doesn't that sound stupid? Can't I draft my L'Jarius Sneed with the 38th pick? Can't I sign the contract you want to give Autry? Can't I give that to Chidobe Awuzie? What are we talking about, people? Stop trying to be the smartest people out there. Just go sign the best freaking player. I'm sorry. To me, this is so simple. It's easy common sense. Your defense sucks. You've got one good player. And I am telling you that with all the money you have, why would you not sign Chris Jones? Number one, he costs too much money. You've got the lowest payroll in the league. Why else would you not sign Chris Jones? Well, I've already got one defensive tackle. You play with two defensive tackles on the field. And not only that, both Jones and Simmons are not nose tackles. They are hybrid defensive end and defensive tackles. Jones constantly lines up outside as a rusher. Jones plays Autry's position. So you can't say it's a log jam because, again, you lose Autry, you replace him with Jones. They play the same position. Well, we have other needs. Agreed. But your other needs are wide receiver, and there's not a Chris Jones available on the wide receiver market. There's certainly not a Chris Jones level player at tackle. If we were sitting here having the debate as to who the Titans would be better off trying to sign, Laramie Tunsil in free agency or Chris Jones, that's different. But instead, we're talking about Jermaine Illuminor and Chris Jones. It's not that hard. You've got the most money to spend in free agency. He's the best player. He wants a contract. You should sign him. We don't need to go down all these nook and crannies. It's like Chris Sanders coming on saying, I really want to sign Jones, but remember, we have to have the money, Jared, at running back for a Gus Edwards or a Deontay Foreman. I can't have Chris Jones because of Gus Edwards? What are we doing? Oh, my goodness, what are we doing? Oof. One texter says, can they draft Sneed in the second round? Do you have that much confidence in Rand Carthon? Look, I saw Albert Hainsworth send 3 guys out of a below-average secondary to the Pro Bowl. Michael Griffin, I think, was tied for the lead in interceptions in the NFL one year because of Albert Hainsworth. So if you sign Chris Jones, the chances are that corner that Rand Carthon drafts in the second round, or Chidobe Awuzie or Kendall Fuller or whoever it may be, those guys look like superstars because the quarterbacks are running for their life because you got Simmons and Jones and a healthy Landry. It seems very simple to me. 615-737-1025 is the phone number if you want to weigh in, 615-737-1025. Okay, to the Predators. By the way, how about them Predators? 6 in a row since the spanking at the hands of the Dallas Stars. Everybody got mad, and they haven't lost since. That's right. We'll do that next. And I do have thoughts on the game, and I have thoughts on the big news, which was Barry Trotz coming on the show yesterday and basically saying we're not trading UC Saros. So I have thoughts on both, and we'll do that next. Tomorrow, it's your chance to participate in Preds Pick to Click. If you correctly guess a Preds player that scores a goal in the Preds game tomorrow night, you win a pair of tickets to an upcoming Preds home game. Participate with Robbie and Retro tomorrow morning at 8:45. Pick to Click is brought to you by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. List your homes with TJ to get your home seen, heard, and sold. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. Ian, I got one thing to say to you.
Okay.
How about them Predators? 6 in a row for the Preds. I was at my dad's office today, and people that I didn't even know really knew the Predators existed were like, man, Predators are on fire. I was like, yes, they are. And last night's game, let me just say, I was scared to death. I was scared to death on Saturday after they had won the first 3 of the road trip that playing crappy San Jose was going to be a massive trap game. Because what I've learned when it comes to the Predators is the second I think the Predators are going to do something, the second I feel comfortable about where the Predators are, they turn around and they do something bad. And so I was scared to death Saturday, and then they won. Then they go to Anaheim on Sunday, who's terrible. Last game of a long road trip. They're 4-0-0 on the trip. That's a trap game. And they win that game. Then I was scared to death for 2 days of last night's game against Ottawa, knowing how much it meant. Because Ottawa has taken down Tampa Bay. They had taken down Vegas. They had taken down Dallas. They had been winning all these games. Willie was sitting there telling me about how they have so much better players than their stats say than the standings say they are, and I'm scared to death. Guys get home at 4 o'clock on Monday, haven't been home in a week and a half. They get home at 4 o'clock on Monday, and now they got Ottawa coming in. And Minnesota's a big one on Thursday. And the Predators came out yesterday on fire because they were great for the first 6 minutes of the game, and they got a 2-0 lead. Then they took a 34-minute smoke break, where, I didn't see anything that made me optimistic at all. I guess Saros was good in net. And then they dominated in the third period where they didn't allow a shot. And I said after the game, I'm like, oh, my God. The Predators, when they're good, are the kind of team that finds a way to make every game matter, that finds a way to not rest on their laurels. That's what happened in 2017. They never felt comfortable, right? The Predators went to Chicago where they were massive underdogs. They eked out game 1, but they knew they were still the underdog. They knew they were supposed to lose game 2. And when they won game 2, they knew that if they won game 3, they could rid themselves of Taves and Kane and the Blackhawks. And so they never felt comfortable. This Predators team, they started to feel a little comfortable in these games. They're up 2-0 after 2 periods against San Jose, and then all of a sudden San Jose makes it a game. But for the most part, they are not taking smoke breaks to start these games like they did that Dallas game. And so last night, I thought they were fabulous. Yossi was unstoppable. It was vintage Roman Yossi, not early season Roman Yossi. Saros was great. And as my dad used to tell me as Braves fans, when the Braves would win and Washington or Montreal would lose, and Philly would lose, and the Marlins would lose, and the Mets would lose, and my dad would say, and all is well in the National League East. Well, last night, St. Louis lost, Minnesota lost, L.A. lost. All was good in Predatorland. Now, the big story surrounding the Predators is something that came up on this show that I'm not sure I agree with Barry Trotz on. And it was the Daily Face-Off report yesterday that the Predators had basically told the New Jersey Devils that Saros was off the table, which, again, I wasn't totally against. I was kind of more, hey, Barry said the price was the price, and the price was astronomical. And if anybody was willing to meet the price, then they get the player, and if they're not, they don't. But Barry came on the show yesterday, and he said something that I understand what he's thinking. But I, as a fan, disagree with. Here's what Barry said. As long as the Predators are in position to make the playoffs, Saros won't be traded. Is that the case? Barry Trotz, presented by Gary Forsacker.
That is the case. I think if we're in the playoff spot, I owe that to our players. I owe that to our fans. Yeah, that's fairly accurate. Now, obviously, I'm going to leave a little window open. If there's some kind of crazy deal that comes out and knocks me on my chair, then I will definitely I owe that to the fans as well and the organization. So, but yeah, that's pretty accurate.
Okay, so here's where I disagree with Barry Trotz. He can say, look, man, I owe this to the team. And that's his opinion, and he can do whatever. But when he says, like, no, I owe it to the fans not to trade UC Saros, I'm a little skeptical of that. I count as a fan. I root for the team. I re-upped on my season tickets today. Like, I count. And as a fan, my opinion is, and I don't want to speak for all of you, you guys are entitled to your opinion. And you can text it in or call it in or whatever. But as a fan, I'm not in favor of shutting down the Saros talk because of this season, right? I am in love with what they've done for the last 2 weeks. And I do like watching this team play. I think they've got a good coach. I think Barry's the right guy as the general manager. I think we're starting to see them really find their groove. Guys are developing their roles there. I think it's great. But I still don't look at this team and say, that's a cup contender right there. I just don't see it. And as much as I like what I'm seeing right now, as much as I'm excited, and I'm, tomorrow, big game. Saturday, Colorado, big game, I'll be there. As much as what I like what I'm seeing right now, I don't think that if they were matched up against an elite offensive team in the playoffs, Dallas, Vegas, Colorado, Vancouver, Winnipeg, I just don't know enough about. But if they get matched up with a Dallas, Vegas, Colorado, or Vancouver, and they're probably getting matched up with Vancouver or Vegas in the first round, if they get matched up with one of those teams, I don't see them winning that series. Sure, it'd be great if they get in, and it'll be exciting because I know this team will put up a fight. And with this goalie, he'll give you a chance. And I think there might just be enough on offense with the consistency they're starting to get out of the bottom six for them to maybe go on the road and take a game, which would make it a just, fascinating series. But there's a difference between that and winning the cup. And there's a difference between that and beating those teams in a playoff series and then turning around and beating Edmonton in the next series. Because they cannot beat Edmonton in the playoffs. No shot. I'm not saying they shouldn't try, but they're not going to beat Edmonton. So I never thought that Saros was going to get traded anyways, because I figured that Barry Trotz had set the asking price so high that nobody would match it because goalies just aren't valued that much around the league. But again, if the sentiment is that last week has changed Barry's disposition and he's decided, no, I owe it to my team that's playing their butts off to not trade the goalie, and I owe it to my fans. Well, as a fan, I'm like, hey, don't worry about this year, Barry. Again, I don't want to speak for all the fans. I'm just speaking for this fan. But as this fan, I'm saying, hold on, Barry. I mean, we started this thing out saying, hey, what is in the best interest long-term of the Nashville Predators? That's what is going to happen, and I'm on board with that. And I was on board with that when that meant that this year might mean no playoffs or a rebuild or a tough stretch. I was on board with that from the jump. When they got beat by Dallas and it looked like this thing was headed down the toilet, I was like, guys, this is what we signed up for when we begged David Poile to tear this team down. So I will say when Barry's like, hey, for the fans, I'm not going to trade the goalie. I'm like, hold on now, that's not what we want. And I don't want them to necessarily trade the goalie. If they get, again, an astronomical price, I want it done. If it's, well, we got a depreciating asset, that's different. Because I think there is value of Saros being on this team. But when Barry's saying like, oh, no, we had a good week, so I don't want to pull the rug out from the fans. Hold on now. I'm not going to give myself this title because I certainly don't think I've earned it. But as representative to the fans, you can still go ahead and trade the goalie. And I guess technically I count as the representative to the fans, right? I'm the one who gets to talk to them every week, and I don't hide what I think. But don't worry about us when it comes to whether or not you want to trade the goalie. Well, I'm thinking long-term Predators over here. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Barry said a lot of stuff yesterday on the program, and as the more I've thought about it, the more I'm like, is he saying it, or is he just saying it because it's good business? Because there was something he said yesterday, I'm like, is this a threat, or is he bluffing? We'll do that next. Hey, Preds fans, do not miss tonight's Smashville Live show at Brew House South in Cool Springs, 6 o'clock. See your Preds star players up close and personal. Michael McCarron, the big sexy, who has been on fire. Goals in his last 2 games. He will be out there, as well as defenseman Dante Fabro. Smashville Live is brought to you by the Black Abbey Brewing Company and ESPN Bet Sportsbook.
Saros can be the answer for the now, and he can be the answer in the future as well. So I think there's a couple windows. There's obviously the trade window here. There's the window after the trade deadline until the draft, and then there's one right after the draft. So I think there's still a couple windows that we will continue to look at. But like I said, I think Juice is a special player, and if you're going to let a special player go, you got to get a special return.
So I don't have a problem with that. That was Barry Trotz. Apparently Barry, and I haven't read it because it sounds exactly like what Barry said on the show yesterday, but apparently Barry had a chit-chat with Pierre LeBron at The Athletic and kind of echoed the same thoughts. So Barry came on the show yesterday, and he said that. Yesterday he came on the show, and it kind of sounded like he was campaigning for a team to call him about Kevin Lankinen, which is not surprising. But the one that I kind of was thinking about all night last night was Tommy Novak. And he came on a show, and I asked him about Novak, a pending UFA. Elliot Friedman, I almost spit out my water last week when he was on doing his weekly hit with Caroline, Willie, and D-Mason. He said that Novak's expected to come in the $4 million range. By the way, Barry's face when I said that, he had like a little smile. Like he was, I think, trying to hide it, like $4 million, please. But here's what Barry said about Tommy Novak. Do you think you're close on a potential deal with Novak to extend him?
I actually talked to the representatives today, so I think the framework is there. We just got to make sure that, like I said, that the years and the numbers match. If they do, then we will probably do something. If we can't, then I don't think I can let a guy like Tommy Novak go for nothing.
Okay, so I heard that, and I actually said after that, I was like, wow, really? Like you can't let Tommy Novak go for nothing? And then I was thinking about it. And I'm like, Ian, I wonder if Barry's bluffing. Like, I wonder if that wasn't for us.
About which one?
Novak.
Uh-huh.
Like, I think that was for Novak's people. Like, hey, we're offering you 3-1 for 4 years, and if you don't take it, we're going to trade you. And not only are we going to trade you, but we're telling you right now, we're going to trade you. And we're telling everybody that we're going to trade you. When I have said, I have said that if, in fact, everything Barry has said to me is the opposite of what I thought. Like, I thought, this is why I don't like assuming what Floyd would have said. I thought that when it came to Barry, that the price was the price, and he wasn't going to take Saros off the trade market, but that he was going to have a high price, and if he got met with the price, he gets, the price is the price, you get the goalie. But then Barry said, no, take him off for the most part. Then on Novak, I thought, well, if they can't get a deal done, it's probably worth keeping him on the team for this playoff run. You'll probably get a second-round pick in return for Novak, so you're not going to be able to get that, so you might as well, whatever. And then with Carrier, you should try to trade him, call up Stasny, because Carrier's not in the long-term plans. And he came on here and said the opposite of all of that, especially the Novak thing, which was basically, if we don't sign a deal, he's gone. And I thought about it all night last night. I was like, I think Trotz is bluffing. I don't think Trotz is trading Novak. I have zero inside sourcing on this. Have not talked to Barry outside of what you heard on the show yesterday between me and him about this. But I think he's bluffing. I think that he used this show as a vehicle to get to the Novak camp to say, take the deal or I'm going to trade you. But is he actually going to trade Tommy Novak when the Predators are very much in playoff position? I don't know. I don't think so. And I told my dad today, I said, look, if Barry Trotz came on this show and just flat out lied to my face, I wouldn't even be mad about it. Because that's business. As long as he's not BSing me on something that is easily provable to where I can be like, well, this says the opposite of it. So there you go. I don't have a problem with it. Again, he's not treating me like I'm stupid. That's good business. Phone line is driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Austin says, I'm not in favor of the trade. While the current team isn't a cup contender, to be one in the future means that the young players need playoff experience, and that only happens if Saros stays a Predator. Well, think about it this way, right? How many guys on this team don't have playoff experience? And off the top of my head, I'm thinking what? Evangelista.
There's probably a handful. I mean,
Novak.
You talking like playoff experience or like real playoff experience?
Well, it's all the same. If you made the playoffs, you made the playoffs.
Okay.
Forsberg has it. O'Reilly has it. Nyquist has it.
Yeah.
Yossi has it. McDonough has it. Shen has it. Fabro has it. Carrier has it. Lazan has it and was terrible in that Colorado series. Trennan has it. Sissons has it. Who doesn't have it?
I mean, there's a couple of younger guys.
Kiefer Sherwood?
Like Sherwood, maybe. You said Evangelista. Cody Glass. He probably hadn't had too much playoff experience. Yeah. Novak.
I don't think it's
Cole
that
Smith.
big of a deal. One texter says, Jared, you just used we when talking about the Predators. Joe will now rant for a week straight on it. Did I say we? I was talking about we, the fans. Because, again, Barry said when it came to Saros that he wasn't going to trade him. He was doing that because he wouldn't be right to the players and it wouldn't be right to the fans. And I am saying, as a fan, we, the fans, are in favor of a trade if it is a big-time, long-term trade. Just like with all these other guys. That's the we I'm saying. And I think I count. Renewed my tickets today. Dustin says, what I've liked is that even when the Predators are outplayed, they found a way to turn it on and to overcome, finding ways to win when being outplayed. I was on the cellar wagon before the road trip, but where they are at this point, the way they're winning, good playoff teams find ways to win, and I am sitting and waiting now. See, I think buyer and seller is too black and white. I think they should sell off Carrier or Fabro, probably Carrier, because you'd get a better return. And I wouldn't re-sign him anyways because Stastny's going to be in that role next year and the rest of this year. And ultimately, Tanner Mullendijk is going to be in one of those spots. So I'd sell off the defenseman if I could, where there's a logjam. They can't get anything for Tyson Barrie. They've tried. So he's going to be on this team, and he kind of stinks right now because I think he's pouting with the wanting to be traded or his ice time or Burnett or whatever it may be. Novak, I'm either way on. If you keep him, you keep him, and he leaves as a free agent, that's fine. But if you get offered something good, you probably need to move him. And then on Saros, I've always been the same. I'm not the one who's changing. Barry seems to be the one who's changing. To me, I am the price is the price. And so I've always said that. Hey, the price is the price. It's super high. And I told Adam Vingan, I want a prospect, a pick, a high-end, ready-made NHL player. He's like, you won't get that. I'm like, okay, then you don't get the goalie. But this winning streak hasn't changed my opinion. Seems like it has a little bit with Barry. Joel says, what irony of John Hines in the Wild in the streak tomorrow night. Whew. It's a biggie tomorrow, but it's not as big because Minnesota lost yesterday. And, it's still a biggie because tomorrow you can kind of deliver a knockout blow as far as Minnesota is concerned. One texter says, I don't think playoff experience is a yes or a no. More is better. I said this to Derek yesterday. Ian, I was listening to the midday show. I was waiting in Barrel House, for me to do the show. Mm-hmm. And Derek was talking about how important playoff experience was. And he's like, I've been through it. I understand playoff experience. It's so important. You have to have playoff experience. And we had to have it and blah, blah, blah. And I said to Derek after they went to break, I said, D-Mace, what year was the first year you made the playoffs? He said 1999. I said, and what was the first year that core group of guys, McNair, George, Wycheck? And he said 99. I said, okay. And what's the furthest you ever went in your career in the playoffs? And he said, 99. So all those other years in the playoffs, did the playoff experience? You see what I'm saying? But that's just me. 615-737-1025. Fitz, I have stuck my flag in the ground. I want Chris Jones on the Titans, and I do not see an excuse as to why Chris Jones shouldn't be on the Titans. Fitz will join us next. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. That's right. I love Hiller. They take great care of my home. They can do the same thing with you. Valentine's Day is well past us in the rearview mirror, but we still got 2 days to go in February, and love is in the air. Find your perfect match this month with Hiller. Get a free UV light when you purchase select new HVAC systems. Get a free whole home surge protection when you buy a new whole home generator. Or get 50% off of a descaler when you buy a new tankless water heater. You'll never be more in love with your home. Find your perfect match today at happyhiller.com. Look, I use Hiller at my home. I have for 6 years. They're fabulous. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call the Happy Face Truck today.
It's a lot of cap space. I know that's what everyone is talking about, and how much we have, but we have to spend wisely. We don't want to just load up and just go, and spend money. Again, we're trying to build a long-term, consistent thing, and you can't do that spending all $90 million out front. We got to be patient. We got to position ourselves that there are going to be guys that come free in June and July, like when we got D-Hop, that we have to have the space for and be able to afford it. And plus, we have to have money for operating costs moving forward throughout the fall, which I think for most of the season we were in the top 5 and having space available. So. We plan to be active, but we're going to be patient and let everything come to us.
Woo! Last year we were top 5 in active space, baby! Way to go! Top 5 in anything else? Winning? No. Offense? No. Defense? No. Craig Aukerman special teams? Hell no. But we're top 5 in active space. So yesterday, right around this time, the news came out that the Chiefs were going to franchise tag L'Jarius Sneed. They have done that today. And I said to Ian backed me up on this. I said to you yesterday when that happened, I said, I want them to sign Chris Jones. And I said, should we do that today or should we save that for tomorrow? And you wisely, as the incredible executive producer and assistant program director that you are, you said
tomorrow.
You said save it for tomorrow. So today, I mean, again, even though it wasn't the most pressing story, I came on 2 o'clock. I'm like, I want Chris Jones. And the only thing I've heard from Titan fans is why I can't have Chris Jones is because you don't think they'll do it. But they've got the most space in the league. They've got the lowest payroll. Somebody's got to pay them. Jason Fitz joins us now on the program, Yahoo Sports, Fox Sports Radio. Fitz, I want Chris Jones and Jeffrey Simmons next to each other making quarterbacks' lives miserable. Can I have it?
I mean, you can. I don't know that I necessarily agree with the logic. Like, I don't feel like the Titans aren't one player away from winning a Super Bowl. We all know that. So if you're Chris Jones, why would you want to go to the Titans, number one? But number two, if you are the Titans and you're trying to figure out how to sign somebody that makes you better, I do think you've got sort of a long-term approach. So do you really want to burn a bunch of money on a short-term thing that doesn't help you long-term? I mean, Chris Jones is going to be signing somewhere to play 2 years on a 3-year contract, right? Like, so I just don't really know how that aligns with the plans for the Titans to actually be good.
Okay, so I'm going to lay this out for you. First of all, the first thing you said was, why would Chris Jones want to come to the Titans? I have an answer for you. The money. The same reason that Chris Jones sat out all of training camp last year and the first game and will not go back to Kansas City. The money. Can we agree on that?
I mean, we can agree that he's looking for the money. I don't know that the Titans can pay him enough more than the relative market value to make him pick the Titans over other places. He's going to get generational, oh my God, money offers from a bunch of places. So why the Titans over anybody else? Like
the same reason Calais Campbell picked the Jags when they were terrible. They offered the most money.
Yeah, I just don't think that there'll be enough wins above replacement in the amount of money he'd be offered from the Titans versus anyone else is going to try and sign him. But yeah, I mean, I guess you can take that. That certainly worked for Calais, and there are plenty of guys that will tell you that money is everything. I don't know that I necessarily think for Chris Jones, money is 90% of it, but is he going to want to go, like, let's say it's an extra $5 million on a deal that's paying him over $100 million. Is that little $5 million kicker going to be enough to make him want to go from the Chiefs to the Titans? And I say that with dripping disrespect in my voice.
Did you see what happened when he sacked that guy for $1 million last year?
Yeah. I mean,
he seemed pretty happy about $1 million.
I mean, right now the Titans have, looking at active cap space, the Titans have $6 million more than the Colts. I mean, Colts could make a mega offer. They have basically the same amount of money as the Bears and the Patriots. So, like, there's plenty of bad teams that can make big offers. I just don't know why he would take that. The Lions have $56 million in cap. Now, they have other things they'll probably address, I would think, secondary. But, like, there's plenty of teams that can easily fit Chris Jones into whatever their plan is if he's the one guy they're going to sign.
So, my thing on the Chris Jones front is this. It is, I think the best thing for the young quarterback is to have success. That regardless of whether or not wins are a quarterback sport, you know Eric Eager, right, from Sumer Sports, used to be Pro Football Focus. Good guy. Great guy. I think he's full of it, but he's a great guy. He's out there tweeting about how Justin Herbert is as good as Joe Burrow, and I don't believe that. And I don't think anybody in America believes that. But what I think happens is we all in America view wins as a quarterback stat. And so the best thing that can happen to Levis is that the Titans give him a team in which he can win. Now, they're still going to have to sign a tackle and sign a guard and, add at receiver and draft and everything else. But I think Simmons and Jones together makes the Titans an infinitely better team on the defensive front. And Trevor said yesterday, it makes the entire defense better. It makes the secondary better. It makes the inside backers better. It makes them all better. If I'm asking Levis to go out there and score me 17 points a game instead of 24 points a game, That's a big difference. And the perception is different too, right? They lost against Indy last year because the defense couldn't get a stop in overtime after Levis kicked the field goal. If they get the stop, all the talk is Levis led them to victory. And so I am worried about getting the young quarterback good. Confidence and sentiment is a big part of it, and that's why I signed Chris Jones.
Okay, let me ask you though about that same. Just if we played the shoes on the other foot to a different organization. If my beloved Raiders signed Chris Jones day one of free agency, and all of a sudden Chris Jones is with Max Crosby, I think we can agree that would change the entire defense, right? How many actual wins do you think? Like the Raiders were 8-9 last year. How many extra wins do you give them for having Chris Jones now on that defensive line next to Max Crosby? Does that get
4?
One more win?
4.
You think that gives 4 more wins?
Fitz,
You think that
I watched the Titans as the Oilers go 8-8, 8-8, and 8-8. And then they drafted Javon Curse out of Florida. And they were 13-3 and in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think, I would have to go back and look at that team to see what else clicked. I don't remember what else clicked in that year. I have a hard time putting 4 wins on Chris Jones to anybody. Like, if my beloved Raiders signed Chris Jones tomorrow, in my mind it's like, okay, well, that's an extra piece, but you're still not a Super Bowl contender. You're
so
still
would you
nowhere
agree
near.
with me on Chris Jones, Fitz, that he is, of the Chiefs' run, of the 5-year run they've had, he is the second most valuable player behind Mahomes?
Third behind Travis Kelce.
Oh, Fitz! Oh, no.
Yes.
No, if you want, Jones dominates those playoff games.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. And no matter what the wide receiver situation has ever been over the course of the last few years, we watched Kelce just go in and carve people up and get first down after first down. Kelce's helped them stay on the field. Like, Kelce's been the Hall of Famer he's been through the process of this run. We're splitting hairs on this, but I would say that Chris Jones is the third most valuable Chief behind Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes over the course of that run.
Jones,
for sure.
I think Jones is closer to Mahomes than Kelce is to Jones.
Oh, yeah, I don't agree with that at all. I don't agree
I
with
think
that
the
at
thing is we completely disagree on the value of the player. I think Chris Jones is that good. Like, I think he is a 4-win, and I don't care what the freaking computers say. I think that you're a 4-win better team because of him. That's how good I think he is, especially in big games. He plays as well as any defensive player in the league in big games. To me, I mean, Aaron Donald makes $31 million a year on that new extension. I'd give Jones 4 years, $128. That's $32 a year, and I guarantee him the first 3. And I don't think anybody else will match it, and I would do it, and I wouldn't even think twice about it.
I feel like that's so the contract you're saying is what I feel we're going to be looking after. That's about the range I think he's going to fall into. By the way, I don't think your number's off. That feels about right for where Chris Jones is going to end up. So the question again becomes, does he want to do that with the Titans? I have a hard time. Look, like I said, I believe Chris Jones is one of the 3-4 best players in the league at his position, no doubt. Maybe one of the 2 best players in the league at his position, no doubt. I just have a hard time with that. I'll put my fan hat on here for a second, but I've watched arguably one of the 2 or 3 best wide receivers with one of the 2 or 3 best running backs in the last 2 years, and one of the 2 or 3 best edge rushers on a team that's won 6 wins, has 6 wins 2 years ago and 8 wins last year as a Raiders fan. Like, one player that you got to have depth on the offensive line, you got to have depth on the defensive line, you got to have weapons on the outside, you got to have a quarterback that can play with Mahomes, and you got to have a secondary that can cover. Like, you unless you have Mahomes, you got to have 53 strong. And I think if you're the Titans right now, you got to look in the mirror and realize you don't have 53 strong, which means you're going to have to sit back and do some of this with some level of patience. I think in a home run offseason, you might find 3 or 4 new quality starters you can bank on for the future. If we believe, and I do, that the Titans are way more than 3 or 4 starters away, that means they're at least 2 off seasons away. Why would I spend the money today on a team that I think is at least 2 off seasons away from competing? I think we're pretty similar in how we view Chris Jones. I think that the Titans are 2 or 3 years away from being where they want to be. That's why I don't think it makes sense.
What did you think this time last year, the Texans?
100%. Texans are the outlier. I mean,
what did you think the year before that at Jacksonville?
About Jackson, I mean, I've been pretty consistent on Jacksonville as being meh.
Remember how we crapped on them for that Christian Kirk contract?
Yeah, yeah.
That's
100%.
been a great deal for them.
Yeah, but so fine. We can use. I'll stick with Houston for a second on this analogy. But look, saying what about Houston last year is a lot like saying, well, you can get Tom Brady in the 6th round. Like, yeah, that's going to happen sometimes. I mean, yes, that is absolutely going to happen.
The Texans had the 5th highest payroll in the NFL last year.
But my point is, like, teams that we are wildly out on, we turn around on. That happens every once in a while. Are we looking at Carolina like right now? Are you going to bet the over on Carolina wins?
They don't have Chris Jones.
Now, if they did have Chris Jones, would you bet the over on Carolina win? Like
they had one good player and they traded him in order to get the quarterback.
Yeah, and now we'll see what happens from there. Like the Texans got the Holy Grail. They got a coach that absolutely came in and destroyed it, and they got a quarterback that did literally Peyton Manning like historic things in his rookie year. He did things we haven't seen rookie quarterbacks do ever, and he did things that we're not going to see these rookie quarterbacks do. So, like, I look at the Texans as a wild outlier. I love the aggressiveness of it. It's great. I think that's probably that's a little like saying you're going to pay your mortgage with a scratch-off lottery ticket. Like, it takes more patience than that for most organizations to build a consistent contender.
Oh, I so disagree. In fact, I'll use this with the Texans. They went out, they added 2 receivers via free agency, 1 in the draft. They traded for a $12 million guard. They signed a right tackle. They gave extensions to their left tackle and their left guard. And in the Jets game they played last year, where it rained a little bit, and I think it was Nico Collins was out, Tank Dell got hurt, and Dalton Schultz was out, and C.J. Stroud was terrible in that game the entire time, and then he got concussed at the very end of the 4th quarter. He got outplayed by Zach Wilson. I mean, to me, what's around the quarterback matters. And so when it comes to the Titans, they're spending $110 million in cash on their roster. I mean, they've got $120 million or so in real cash they can spend. I don't see why I can't give 32 or 40 of it to Chris Jones and then still go get my Hollywood Brown or my Gabriel Davis or whoever and Jermaine Illuminor. And, like, I can still get those guys, and I can still give $40 million to Chris Jones.
Dude, I welcome you to go hire Jermaine Illuminor, by the way. You can have him. You can have him for free. I watched every game.
That's my point.
You can have him for free. But my point is through
all
all
these
of
other
this,
Scarbini free agents suck. So what's the point
about
of having the cap space if I can't go spend it on good players and I have to go spend it on Hollywood Brown?
Because the real point of the cap space is to draft right and then reward the draft. As Field Yates pointed out last year, if you looked at 6 straight years of drafts, in the first 3 rounds, every single player the Kansas City Chiefs selected in the first 3 rounds became a high-level contributing starter to their team. Like, that's why you eventually use the money. I mean, you can use the money on Chris Jones, but that's not going to drastically change anything. And for your Houston Texans analogy, I'll then turn around and say, yeah, how many years did it take to put the right things around Burrow to make sure that the Bengals could be consistently where they want to be?
1
Took a second to the year he was out all year, and then they went out and they got him Jamar Chase, right? Like, so 1 year, one player did not make the difference. It takes a few years. T. Higgins is going to be, or was franchised at this point because they drafted well. Like, you at the end of the day, it takes a second to put all of that together. You go up and down the list. Now, how many years of patience did it take the Bills?
No,
how many
you're
years
wrong.
did it take
the
the Bills?
Bengals. Let's use them as an example, right? They drafted Joe Burrow in the first round of 2020. In 2021, they spent on Trey Hendrickson, which was a slam dunk in free agency. They spent on Chidobe Awuzie, who was a good corner. They spent on Von Bell, and they ended up spending, what was it, on La'el Collins. La'el Collins. They used the draft choice on Jamar Chase. They were in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, they were in the Super Bowl after he blew out his knee, after Burrow blew out his knee, which put them in a situation where they could actually draft high enough to get Jamar Chase. And the La'el Collins signing turned out to be an absolute bust. It wasn't worth the money at all in that process. And they've had to let players walk through this process too. So, like, the Bengals, my point with the Bengals is it did not happen in one offseason. It didn't happen in one offseason.
Yes,
Burrow
it did. It literally happened in one offseason.
Burrow didn't play his rookie year. How could it happen in 1 year
okay.
if Burrow didn't play his rookie year?
But I'm saying the Titans have their quarterback, right? Like, last year was the year that they drafted the quarterback.
I'm not willing to say that. I'm not willing to say that at all.
Well, there's no point even trying. If Levis isn't the guy, then it doesn't matter. None of it matters, and we all know that. So I'm trying to do what's best to help Levis get better.
It matters if you build patiently. It matters
Who's
if you build a
building
whole
patiently?
roster. The 49ers did. I mean, that's the 49ers are the living, breathing, eating example. Like I said, the Chiefs, 6 straight years, all 3 of their first 3-round picks, every single year for 6 straight years, made that roster, made impact. Like, there are plenty of teams.
Clyde
The 2
Edwards,
teams we just saw in the Super Bowl they built patiently.
I disagree, but I hear you. Fitz, as always, great stuff. I still love you.
Appreciate you, brother. Bye.
I want Chris Jones. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. The Bengals are a terrible example. They went to the one year they went to the Super Bowl. They were the worst team in the league. They got Joe Burrow, and you have to, be that bad in order to do it. You suck it up, and the next year they spent, and they were in the Super Bowl. Bad example. So Jermaine Illuminor is one of the tackles the Titans could sign. Fitz is like, oh, he's so bad, you can have him. That's what's on the free agent market if I don't sign Chris Jones. 615-737-1025. Coming up next, there is something that I didn't think was a big deal, but the more I've thought about it, Paul Kaharski has kind of convinced me that this might be something worth getting pissed off about. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game.
Is there one important question more than any other question that you ask these guys that it could not, I don't say make or break if you're going to draft them or something, but is there that question you have in your back pocket where you really want to hear a good answer from this young man?
Actually, I don't. For me, in this process, I sit back and more so listen, throughout this process and allow our area scouts and our national scouts to lead. They're the guys that have been going in these schools for the last 3, 4, 5, and 6 years of getting to know these guys. And so I think it'd be selfish of me to, jump into this part of the process and try to take it over and ask all the questions. So I let them drive the interview, and I just listen, and I'll add a question in, here or there. But realistically, I just like to hear about their passion for the game, how they approach the game. If there is a question, I'll ask them. It'll be more so about their preparation in the week and what that looks like for them, and have them talk me and walk me through that. That'll be the one question that I'll typically ask, just to see if they have a plan on how they're going to attack the opponent each week.
Rand Carthon yesterday on Chasing Big Joe. So when the groundbreaking takes place at Nissan Stadium, Paul Kaharski reported that Rand Carthon, Chad Brinker, and Brian Callahan will be back in Nashville to break ground with the hard hats and the photo ops and everything else, which means that when the offensive linemen are in the interviews, yes, the most important part of the team, the offensive linemen are in for the interviews, they will be doing them virtually or not there, and Anthony Robinson and the scouts will be running the show in Indianapolis. And I saw that last night, and I thought, okay, didn't think much of it. Then this morning, I was listening to Robbie and Rexroad, and Paul was on, and Paul makes a pretty compelling point as to why I should probably hate this.
They're not going to meet the offensive linemen face-to-face until the top 30 visits at the headquarters and pro day meetings, which, look, I'll leave people to judge. I didn't think not being at the Senior Bowl for Rand Carthon was a big deal. But when you stack on top of that Carthon, Callahan, and Brinker are going back to Nashville for the groundbreaking for the stadium on Thursday, and they're only going to be on Zoom on Thursday when interviews with offensive linemen here happen, the 18-minute interviews they get with the guys they choose to speak to here. That, let people judge. That makes me a little wary. You have 4 occasions to see guys face to face. So they gave up the Senior Bowl, which is one of them. And now I don't know why at the groundbreaking you couldn't just say, well, the general manager's not here because he needs to talk to offensive linemen at the combine. But here's the head coach and the president of football operations and the owner and the like. To me, the groundbreaking shouldn't be trumping any football things.
So I heard that, and I'm like, that's a pretty good point. And when I bitched about the combine, and again, I didn't care that much, but I did make a big deal of it because I didn't like it. People are like, well, no. They'll be at the combine. They'll have the combine. They don't need the Senior Bowl. They got the combine. And now it's like, actually, they got to go to the groundbreaking for that. And so I got to be honest, I don't like it. I heard Paul say that, and I was like, he makes a compelling case. And it reminds me of somebody texted into the text line earlier this year, and they were like, Mike Vrabel doesn't care what you think. And I'm like, right, Mike Vrabel doesn't care what I think, but he does care what I tell you. And so I think it's the same way. They probably don't care what Paul thinks, but Paul telling everybody that does leave people like me sitting there saying, maybe I should not like that, right? 615-737-1025. Jared versus Joe is next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. 5 o'clock on a Wednesday means it's time for Jared versus Joe. Caroline is here today. Hello, Caroline.
Hello, how we doing?
Outstanding. Joe is in Indianapolis at the NFL Scouting Combine and apparently not at Thompson Bowling Arena today for the UT basketball. Joe, what are you doing in Indianapolis? You don't do the Combine. You do basketball this time of year. What are you doing?
Well, I go to the Combine every year, but I am back from the Combine. But don't worry, I'll be in Tuscaloosa. We can't do all the hoops games, man. I'll be in Tuscaloosa Saturday. I'm doing my best, okay?
I'm surprised you're
Will you be offering people in Tuscaloosa mints from your pocket?
Like I told Ian, apparently I'm a germ terrorist, and I didn't know it. I've been very humbled today. My entire family hates me now.
That is disgusting. That is a fair response from your family.
The jeans were clean.
I mean,
they weren't sweaty.
I don't know.
I don't know. I
Between
don't
that
know.
and PK's. Go ahead.
Yeah, and PK's whatever the hell he was talking about.
Yeah, his Kalen Kaler slander this morning was through the roof. All right, time now for Jared versus Joe.
Jared Stillman versus Joe Rexrode. Now on Stillman and Company.
On ESPN
102.5 The Game.
Jared versus Joe is presented by Pella Windows and Doors in Nashville. Caroline, go.
No Kalen Kaler slander on this program.
Well, we
Joe,
don't know, but continue.
TBD. Joe, you kick us off. The Chiefs are using the franchise tag on L'Jarius Sneed. So should the Titans sign Chris Jones?
Oh, yeah. If you can sign Chris Jones, hell yes. Will they? Can they get him? All that? I don't know. It seems like it seems far-flung. And I don't know, like with him, like is he at the stage where, like, contending team matters? I mean, can the Titans, way out offer other teams? I don't know. I think they're going to have to come pretty strong. But, yeah, I mean, the idea of Chris Jones and Jeff Simmons and Harold Landry, that makes up for a lot of other deficiencies. If you can have a part of your team, and especially either side of the trenches, to me, or quarterback, but either side of the trenches, you can be dominant. I mean, that makes up for so many other things. I mean, the rest of that defense would benefit so much from it. He's a great player.
Well, here's my question.
Okay.
Why can't I have Chris Jones? Like, you cap people, all you guys did since October when we all realized this team was going to suck and the Titans waved the white flag and traded Kevin Byard. All I've heard is, we're going to have the most cap space. And so if you do, why can't I spend it on Chris Jones? Somebody has to pay Chris Jones. Why can't it be me? And on top of that, not only when I can't spend it on Chris Jones, apparently, why would Chris Jones not want to come here? I mean, I've got the most money, and that's all he cares about. He sat out games last year over money. Did you see the celebration he had when he sacked a guy for $1 million at the end of last year? All he cares about is the money. So I've got the most of it.
Well, first of all, that's a stupid statement. All he cares about, anybody would care about being paid market value, but to sit there and say all he cares about is, reductive crap from you that we're used to. But, of course, he cares about money. He should care about money. If you tell me, first of all, I would never tell you they can't do it. They absolutely can do it. They do have a ton of cap space, and they should use it if it's on something like this, for sure. And as far as you're saying, they can absolutely – they have the most cap space. There are other teams that can come with with an offer. There are other teams that don't have all the needs the Titans have too, right? So, I mean, I'm sure there will be a competitive market for Chris Jones. But, yeah, I mean, the Titans may have to do that. I mean, for you to sit here, though, and not think that he would want to be on a winning team along with getting the most possible money, I think that's a little bit silly. I would guess that he would like to win and continue to win.
I'm sure he would like it, but I don't think it's as important to him as the money when he was literally sitting out games last year in order to get a new contract that he was never going to get.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm not saying he's taking a bargain. I'm not saying he's taking a bargain to go to a contender. I am saying, though, that it may not help the Titans that they have sucked the last 2 years.
I would just say this. 4 years, $128, that's $32 million a year. That eclipses Aaron Donald's $31, and I'm guaranteeing 3 years. And I don't think anybody else will offer that. And I'd offer it because I think that of all the things you can use all of this cap space on to help Will Levis, this might be the most beneficial thing because I do believe that those two together would give you, and you brought up Landry, absolutely, would give you the makings of a dominant defensive front, which makes your entire defense better and makes your entire team better. And it's like replacing Danico Autry with Barry Bonds. I'm talking about a true number 3 hitter to go there next to Simmons. Jones, I actually think, is better than Simmons. And so I would get Jones and Simmons. I don't see why they can't do it. I don't see why they shouldn't do it. And I don't see why it shouldn't be the number one priority, since all these free agents that we talk about anyways, for the most part, kind of stink. It's like, oh, Jonah Williams at Cincinnati. I got to have money to sign him. Chris Sanders today came on the show, and he's like, I'd love Chris Jones. But, I got to have money to be able to sign a guy like Gus Edwards or Deontay Foreman. I'm like, wait a minute. I can't have Chris Jones because I have to sign Gus Edwards? What are we doing?
Yeah. Well, of course not. Now it
Chris
is true again. The Titans.
Stuff.
You've told me that they have 16 holes or whatever it is. They do have a lot of needs, so they do have to use money elsewhere. But, yeah, if you can get a premium elite player, then that's your first priority. And then, you go from there. And if you get him, there are some holes you can not fill, and it won't hurt you.
Yes. Amen. I thought Joe was going to poo-poo all over this like Fitz did. But add Joe, Ian, to the list with Trevor and Chris and me and all the callers out there that want Chris Jones. And the only thing we've got are Titan fans that are just like, I want it, Jared, but I don't think they'll do it because they think the Titans are cheap. And so this is the moment that the Titans can prove that they're not cheap. Caroline, what's next?
Who wouldn't want Chris Jones?
Fitz. He thinks he's worth less than 1 win a year.
4 is a lot. 1 is dramatically low. But I'll continue. Jared, you go first this time. So I heard this morning, I was listening to Paul Kuharski on Robbie and Rex Road, and he mentioned something that made me raise an eyebrow a little bit. He said that Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan and Chad Brinker are coming back to Nashville for the groundbreaking tomorrow, and they're going to be doing the offensive line combine interviews via Zoom. Is that bad?
Oh, man, I really wish Joe would have gone first on this so I could hear his argument that may have formed my argument. I'm so torn on this. Part of me thinks that they can effectively do this via Zoom, right? Like, I've had meetings on Zoom, and it's fine. Like, it's not, perfectly face-to-face, but it's not that much different from face-to-face. At the same time, I got lectured, me, personally, got lectured about the Senior Bowl doesn't matter that they're not there because they're going to go to the Combine and they'll do all the meetings that they could have done at the Senior Bowl. They'll do them at the Combine. And now we're right here at the Combine and, we can't do it the way we're supposed to do it because we got to go back for the groundbreaking to kiss some babies and take some pictures. And I heard Rand Carthon say this yesterday, that he always tells people that they got to keep the main thing the main thing. Well, the main thing should be fixing that freaking offensive line, not the groundbreaking at the stadium. I'm sorry, but we can break ground on the stadium without them. Send Chad Brinker. I don't even know exactly what his job is anymore. It's too confusing anyways. Send him, take the pictures, break the ground, but leave Brian Callahan there with the offensive lineman. Leave Rand Carthon there with the offensive lineman. But at the same time, I do think that they can do things over Zoom. And, I'm mad about it because I got lectured so hard about the Senior Bowl thing, even though I didn't make that big of a deal about it. Everybody made a big deal about it that I said something about it. But I'm like, you can't sit there and lecture me about how important the Senior Bowl or how it doesn't matter because you'll go to the Combine, and then the most important part of the Combine for you, you're skipping out on. You can't do that, so I'm against it.
So the only thing I don't like with the Senior Bowl, they're putting together a staff, and that's critical, and that's about winning football games. So, I was totally fine with that, as we discussed on here. I don't love that you're taking away from anything that has to do with football for dog and pony show. To me, it's like, it is all about creating a product that will put butts in seats, that will win games. You win games, you keep your job, you get more money. You lose games, you get fired. I mean, it's all about winning and putting together a winning team, and that's all about. It's more about talent than anything that you are acquiring. So I don't love that it's for that purpose. But like when we had this discussion this morning, I read Raheem Morris quote from yesterday about look, a lot of people are less and less valuing what the combine does because. And I read this quote from Raheem Morris, but it was just like they're so coached up. These players are so coached up in these meetings that it's like there's very little guard down and there's really little insight, and it's gotten worse, and it used to be very different. And so those visits are much more valuable. And I agree with what Jared said. I mean, is in-person better than Zoom? Yes. Like you can see, maybe someone, whatever, fidgets with their hands, and you can't see that on the Zoom, right?
Hey, Will Levis taking a bag of chips, Caroline.
Yeah,
there
can't
you
be doing
go.
that.
That's right. Taking that bag of chips. So, I mean, I don't like that that's the reason, but as far as, again, like some teams are just blowing this thing off entirely now, and like the Rams barely care at all about the combine and just had an incredible draft class. So I'm not bad. No, I don't think it's bad, but I still feel like, if you're torn away from something like this, it should be because of football. So like they have to hire a strength coach still. If that was the reason, all right, yeah, I'd get that. I mean, that's critically important.
You can fly. The strength coaches can interview in Indianapolis. I'm tired of that excuse. Like, for years, people have gotten hired and have done interviews at the Senior Bowl, and that's why. And again, players are more important than coaches. So when I hear this, they got to get the strength coach. You can do that. You can take your time on that. This you don't get a second chance at.
I'm just saying anything football related, fine. The PR stuff, it seems like like Brinker or whatever. Do they all have to go? I mean,
like just send Eddie George, and that's fine. Like. It's Eddie George is there breaking ground. Way to go. Mazel tov. Crack the glass. Here you go. This is the one thing I'll say, though. I can't be mad at Rand and Brian Callahan over this because my guess is
their decision.
Yeah, the owner probably told them, like, I want you here. And if the owner says you have to do it, then you have to do it. Whereas, I don't know if the owner was involved in the whole not going to the Senior Bowl thing. But I just – you can't be telling people, like, make the main thing, but hold on, I got to go do this bull crap thing over here to take a picture, so I'll be out for
if
this.
If the owner's involved in the Senior Bowl thing, that's ridiculous.
No, I'm not blaming the owner on the Senior Bowl, but I'm blaming the owner for this. Like, I can't imagine Rand was like, I don't want to stay in Indianapolis at the Combine. I want to be at the groundbreaking. My guess is the owner told him, hey, you're going to be at the groundbreaking.
And you're probably right, and that to me is ridiculous. I mean, so that part of it, if it makes sense, and if they find value in being here and they're being pulled out, like if you're Amy Adams Strunk, I understand that there's like different levels of fandom, but to me, like the real diehard Titans fans probably don't like hearing that, right? Like, oh, great. Well, at least they're going to be at the groundbreaking. That makes it more likely I'll buy that PSL. Like,
well,
what?
And not only that, I feel like it might be more for her that they're there than it is for anybody else because I don't know about you guys. Do you guys give a rat's ass about this groundbreaking?
No.
So, I mean, like, what are we doing? But it's like, it's my groundbreaking of my stadium, and so I want my people here to take my picture.
That's what Hutton said today when he was on with us. He was like, yeah, they're there for the picture. Who gives a crap about a picture? Photoshop them in.
Like, I understand, like the whole story about the Titans trying to trade back into the first round last year for Levis, where they called Philadelphia, and Philadelphia was like, well, we would, but we're going to take Nolan Smith instead. And Kansas City was never going to trade that pick because Clark Hunt, who got an F-, by the way, because he's such a cheap ass, Clark Hunt, the owner of the Chiefs, there's no way they're going to trade that pick out of that spot so that he can't go out there into the Kansas City crowd with them walking out 2 Super Bowl trophies and the fans going nuts so he can make the pick. There's no way they're going to do that. And I understand that. Like, if you're the general manager of the Chiefs and you're like, hey, we can pick up a second in next year's draft from Tennessee if we deal them back into the first right now, you're like, the owner's like, I want my moment. I get that. But this, like, this is. Also, I would just like the record to state, Caroline, if I could. This is just for the record. I'm not making a big deal about this. I don't want Joe to get mad about this. Just for the record. Can Raheem Morris win a football game before we start using him as the gospel? Well, Raheem Morris said.
Well,
yeah.
he's a guy who's been in the league. It's not about your success. He's been in the league. He's been going to combines for 20 plus years. There's no value in. You're always like, well, this guy used to be a GM. He said the plane from Green Bay might have been sent from Russia. I mean, okay. Well, he used to be a GM, so he knows something about the freaking plane from Green Bay, Jared. I love
All
how you
I'll
changed
say
the rules
is Andy Reid was at the combine yesterday, so it must be important to Andy Reid. There you go. 614. I don't even know. I'm getting out the phone number. More Jared versus Joe next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 The Game.
Stillman versus Joe Rexrode. Now on Stillman and Company.
On ESPN
102.5 The Game.
Jared versus Joe is presented by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville. Caroline.
All right, Joe, you go first. It was all receiver. We got to get faster. We want to get guys that can find the end zone from Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan yesterday. So did the Titans tip their hand yesterday about the 7th overall pick?
Good God, no. They tip nothing. They don't have a hand to tip. I mean, first of all, I meant to do this, I never did, but I wanted to go back and look at how much of that talk was actually unprompted and how much of it. I mean, Kaharski asked like 12 receiver questions between the two of them, I swear. And then he wrote his stories like, oh, all they do is talking about receiver. Like, well, you asked all the questions about receiver. But, so.
Your
that's dirty, by the way.
It's progressively more Italian as time goes on.
Hey, that's dirty. Like, that is, like, I mean, that is so, and again, I didn't count how many of the questions were about receiver and how many of them came from Paul. But that, if what Joe's saying is actually what happened, that Paul asked 15 receiver questions and then wrote that all they're talking about is receiver, that is freaking dirty. Like, that would be like me.
Hear a single freaking question.
That would be like me going to the press
that?
conference and like saying to Rand, like, hey, Ran, you didn't go to the Senior Bowl and you didn't go to the Combine for the offensive line interviews. Do you think that this shows that you can't do your job? And then me coming on air and saying, well, there are questions that are being asked about whether or not Rand can do his job. Like, that's dirty if that's what happened, but continue.
Yeah, and I'm ripping on him. There were other people who asked about receivers, but the point is they were asked a lot. Look, like they don't like the big quote from Callahan that people latched onto is all things being equal, I'll take the guy who scores touchdowns, and that's fine. And we obviously have the Sewell Chase thing, but Chase.
Where did he say that first though?
Talent.
Right here on this program. Continue.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, he said that basically before, and again, all things being equal, they don't know what things are equal. They don't know. They don't have all the information. I mean. I promise you, they're not even done with the film. I mean, on everybody. That continues as you start to really dig in on people, plus the interviews, plus the testing. No, and I mean, and I don't really buy. I mean, like Robbie threw this out, and I know other people have too. It's like, God, if they talk so much about it, maybe that actually means they want tackle. I mean, I think they were answering these questions. I don't think they were being like intentionally deceptive or anything like that, but. They just don't know. They can't know. If they do know, then to me, that's malpractice. Like, this is when you are finding out. This is when you are finally getting to the point of knowing. They just had a 4-hour meeting with the coaches telling the scouts what they value and all these things and changing the lingo on some things. I mean, they're in the process of finding out what things are equal and what things aren't. So, no. And this happens every year at the Combine. They were like concrete stuff from yesterday. Kevin O'Connell, that was concrete. They want Cousins back. Okay. And Ryan Poles, you know what? They are definitely trading Justin Fields. He didn't say it, but it's obvious. But there's so little right now that is from this because we're talking draft stuff right now, and they haven't even done free agents.
So I think they did tip their hand. I think they're going tackle. And I will tell you where I surmise that. And this may not be fair to Joe. Because Joe was in Indianapolis yesterday and he was traveling. But, Caroline, I believe that you are the reason that I believe they've tipped their hand at tackle. Two specific things that you asked Brian Callahan yesterday. Number one, you asked him about Skoronski's position, and he said Skoronski's going to be a guard. So once I heard that, I'm like, okay, they need 2 tackles. And we know that. And, I mean, yesterday, I don't think Brian Callahan is stupid, so when he goes, well, Jalen Duncan and PT might be pretty decent, it's like, okay, forget about that. They need 2 tackles. The second thing that he said to you, Caroline, you asked him about the Chase and Sewell debate, and you did a very good job of not putting him in position because he was asked a question about Burks, and he was like, well, I would never compare somebody to Jamar Chase because Jamar is Jamar. But you did a very good job of not letting him use that when you said, look, I know there's only one Jamar Chase, but there are other elite touchdown scorers. And you asked him about Roma Dunze and about Malik Neighbors, and if they qualified as those type of players. And when he said, his answer to that was, I haven't watched or I haven't gotten into the scouting process enough. Bull crap.
Yeah, right.
Right. Bull crap. Now, if we're going to ask him about, fourth round guys, maybe he hasn't gotten to that. The top guys, guarantee you he's gotten to that. So I think that's bullcrap. And then secondly, he went out of his way to tell you that this situation, the Alt Fashanu Neighbors Odunze situation, is not like the Chase and Sewell debate. He said it's not like that. And to me, I think he did that because he doesn't want to be forced to take the tackle, which they are forced to do because they took a guard with the 11th overall pick last year. He doesn't want to be forced to take a tackle and then have all of us sit there and say, you just passed on Jamar Chase? Like, you just passed on the next Jamar Chase? So he wants you to know, Caroline, that he doesn't know if these receivers are Jamar Chase elite level, and that this debate is nothing like the debate they had in Cincinnati when, let's not kid ourselves, it's the same debate.
No. I was with you on a lot of that, and that's all fine. Those are good clues. But the reason it's not the same, you got to go back to that. Sewell is absolutely more of a lock, or at least by the time the draft came around, than those two, than Alt and Fashanu.
I'm told Alt is like the greatest plug-and-play tackle ever.
Well, I've heard some people say Fashanu's better. That's not. No, that was one tackle and one receiver, both absolutely alone on their own plane compared to their positions. And Chase is better. Well, I do think Harrison could be in that realm. But Chase is absolutely better than as a prospect, better than a Dunze and Neighbors.
Matt Miller just wrote at ESPN the comps. Matt Miller at ESPN just wrote the comps for these guys. Guess who the comp for Rome Odunze was?
Who is it, Jerry?
Jamar Chase.
Great. And I bet you if he didn't say it, he should say it. Comp does not mean equal. I mean, are you kidding me that you're trying to make that – you're trying to say a comp equal – oh, same level of talent. You know better than that. Jared, you know better.
I think that when we say, who is this player, and they say, oh, he is Jamar Chase, like that is what they're saying.
Oh, stop it. Oh, well, then Matt Miller's stupid.
Am I wrong for thinking that?
Then Matt Miller's stupid.
Am I wrong for thinking that? Seriously.
Yes, the comp is stylistically. I mean, you need to put the caveat in there, but yes, there's plenty of comps that also come with the asterisk. I'm not saying the exact. I mean, like there's comps to Michael Jordan, 6'6" shooting guard. Not saying it's Michael Jordan part 2. No.
Who's the comp to Jordan?
Oh my God, Jared, a 6'6" shooting guard who's athletic. There's about 1 million of them. Okay?
I don't ever remember anybody comparing Zach LaVine to Michael Jordan.
Okay. This is where you just continue to just
Caroline,
run into.
I am dead serious.
You run naked into the woods and just completely destroy a conversation. You're like a freaking child at the high chair. Shut up. Let's stay on task. Let's stay on the conversation. Some of your clues are fine there, but again, my prevailing point on this is they should not know for sure anything to tip their hand. And I actually believe to an extent that he has not evaluated Odunze and Neighbors as deeply as he will by the time we get to the draft. Not at all. There's a lot of work to be done.
I think he knows what they are, though. Like the way that he said to Caroline, I've just started. I don't think that's true. And on top of it,
look, I think they're going to take one of those tackles. I do. But I just don't think that yesterday's answers really tell us anything.
I mean, I'm still hung up on this. Caroline, am I wrong that when somebody says, like, a comp for this guy is Johnny, that he's saying he projects to be like Johnny?
Yeah, you're wrong.
I'm wrong?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
What are we talking about?
Comp,
if you say that this guy, his comp is Tom Brady, I think I'm getting Tom Brady.
Yeah, but nobody compares players to Tom Brady.
That's why nobody's comped to Tom Brady, because Tom Brady's so good, nobody's like Tom Brady.
Oh, I don't know how many receivers out there are like Jamar Chase. I think there might be traits that are very similar.
Exactly. That's what a comp is. Jared, hold on. There was a draft analyst
speed size
who compared Kirk Cousins to Tom Brady. Kirk Cousins was as good as Tom Brady, but it was not me. But stylistically, balls out fast, not athletic at all, but accurate, sees the field, processes all that stuff amazingly well, but a subpar athlete. And all that
I will
stuff.
say this.
That,
I would just like to state for the record, this has nothing to do with this debate right now, but I would, if it was my ass on the line and I was the GM, I would want to take Malik Neighbors over Marvin Harrison. I think Malik Neighbors is better than Marvin Harrison. I do. And
that's quite a hot take.
That's why I see all these.
Give him the L, Caroline. Give him the L.
I see all these.
You think I'm going to give him the L after saying that?
Yes, because you're objective enough to know how stupid that is.
I think Malik Neighbors is freaking awesome.
I think that a lot of people might overvalue Marvin Harrison because his name is Marvin Harrison. And that has nothing to do with him not being a good player because he's a great player.
Absurd. Oh, no.
I
Why?
think Malik Neighbors
Do you think that he would have been a Heisman finalist if his name was Joe Rexrode? I do not.
Are you
Marvin
kidding
Harrison
me?
is an elite player.
I don't
Yes,
want
I did
Bronny
watch him
James
play.
anywhere near my NBA team. Marvin Harrison is an elite. My God.
I know he's an elite player.
crap.
I know that.
Bronny.
I just said that. I know he's an elite
Hell,
player.
You lose
He's an
Jared
elite
versus
talent.
Joe. Caroline, you lose. To get an
Okay,
0-1 record.
bye,
for that.
Joe.
I'm sorry.
Bye.
All right. Get the last one because
Lord.
we're low on time. But I stand by my neighbor's take. Go ahead.
Okay, Joe, you go first. Or no, Jared, you go first. Barry Trotz said that as long as the Preds are in the playoffs, then Saros is off limits. What does that mean for the trade deadline, considering the Preds find themselves in a playoff spot right now?
So I said this to Barry yesterday on the show that I thought that the goal this year was the long-term Nashville Predators and that took precedent over the short term for this year. And when you say he's off the table, but Barry did said off the table, but you're telling me that you're focused on the short-term Nashville Predators, and I don't like it. To me, that is very David Poyle-esque. That is second-round pick for Jeremy Lauzon, and I don't like it. Now, I didn't think that anybody would ever meet Trotz's asking price for Saros anyways, and I thought it should be an astronomical asking price. But as much as I've enjoyed this team the last week, and I do enjoy watching them play, and I really do think they're going to make the playoffs now, I am not losing sight of the big picture of what I think the Predators should be, which is not about 2023, 2024. I'm more focused on the future. And so that approach, and I think some of this could have been bluffing. Like I think he was bluffing on the Novak thing yesterday. I think that approach is kind of short-sighted.
Well, I think, I don't know, but this would be a lot better for the Preds if this were true. I think that Barry Trotz has gotten very underwhelming offers for Saros, and this is almost like a Hail Mary, which is like, yeah, we're good. Well, we'll go the rest of the year. Playoffs, good. I'm fine. And he's hoping someone blows him away. I mean, he told Pierre LeBrun today, that he wrote this today in the Athletic, basically like it's looking like whatever the quote was, he's going to be with the team. It's trending that way or whatever, right? To me, that is much more about the offers he's received than, we can make the playoffs. Never mind. We're keeping Juice.
That makes sense.
If I'm wrong, that's not good. That's not good. And I don't think I'm wrong though. I think that he's just gotten bad offers. And so it's like, well, I guess we're just going to go back to the drawing board in the summer and maybe a team that isn't in a position right now to make a run but still could see him being the final piece will make a good offer. So I still think that maybe, someone close to the deadline comes with something much better that he's still going to be gone. I don't buy that it's like 0% that he's going to be traded.
Caroline, who wins?
A lot of arguing on today's program. That's a good question. I'm going to go with Joe's going to win this week because your definition of comp is incredibly wrong.
I don't understand this. This is, and I'm not mad. I am totally flabbergasted by this. Like, I always think that when someone's like, oh, yeah, who does he compare to? He compares to Chipper Jones. Like, okay, he's going to be a 300 hitter who hits 20 bombs a year. Like, that's.
No. It's the comps are stylistic.
Comparison.
That's what that is. right? Like that's what
a lot of
he
things that aren't
projects to
equal.
be him.
No, it is not projects to be. It is compares to.
This kind of explains some things, Jared. You got to pay closer attention to stuff, man.
I would pay closer attention to what? Read the dictionary and then decide. Okay, so does this mean that
this happens like every draft? There's a million comps, and no one is saying this is going to be the exact same quality of player.
Again, I am totally
It's
flabbergasted
not a copy
by
and
this.
paste situation.
What's that?
It's not like a copy and paste situation. It's just like, his kind of style and size reminds me of this player. He's comparable to this player. He is not this
I think if you tell me like the comp is Randy Moss, right? Like I think I am getting the most athletic wide receiver who can do everything on the field. Like that's what I'm thinking.
You're getting Randy Moss.
That's what I'm saying. I think I'm getting if you're a draft guru and you're like, this guy is so good, because I think that I see some Randy Moss in Malik Neighbors. And so I see that, and I'm like, okay, so he's Randy Moss. Like I'm drafting Randy Moss with this pick.
Yeah, you really, really never can be a GM, please. Okay?
Oh, I'd be a
I know
good
you want to
GM.
be, but you can never, never be one.
I just
Caroline,
be like
I'm
Rand
sorry I yelled
Carthon.
at
I
you.
let everybody else do the job. Kidding. Jared versus Joe. Thank you, guys. This is presented by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville. Stillman and Company. We roll along. 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
if they have that debate, a Joe Alt versus Malik Neighbors, Joe Alt versus Rome Odunze debate, I think the answer is yes. Like, take whichever you feel you have a slightly higher grade on, or if you have, the identical grade to those players, then I think you just have to make a philosophical decision.
That was Field Yates on our show. And the one thing that I actually thought I was going to win Jared versus Joe, only because of Joe and Caroline's bickering about Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr. I will stand on this. I think Malik Neighbors is better than Marvin Harrison Jr. If I were a GM and I had the fourth pick like Arizona does, I would, go up and down and up and down and up and down to my scouts about, are you sure Marvin is better than Malik Neighbors? And if they weren't sure, it'd be hard. I wouldn't want to be in that position. I'd want to pick after Marvin's off the board because I think Neighbors is a better player. And the one thing that drives me crazy yesterday when Brian Callahan said that Skoronski's going to play guard that kills me, not that like maybe Peter would be a terrible tackle, so maybe they're better off doing this, but it's like, oh my God, now do I have to pass on Malik Neighbors, who I think might be, who I compare to Randy Moss, and that's what I think like he might be the next Randy Moss. Do I have to do that because I took a guard at 11 last year? Chad is up next on our program. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. What's up, Chad?
Hey, Jared. So listening to you, Joe, argue about comps, and it reminded me when Traylon Burks was coming through the combine and the draft, his comp was A.J. Brown. And how did that work out?
So here's where I'll disagree with that, though, because a lot of people have texted that in. Thank you, Chad. A lot of people have texted that in that have said, like, hey, the A.J. Brown or Traylon Burks comp was A.J. Brown. The difference is, and this may not matter to you, but I know that it mattered to Floyd, A.J. ran a 4.49, Burks ran a 4.55. There's a difference there. And so when I saw that Burks ran a 4.55, remember, Burks was supposed to go in like the top 6 or top 10 or something like that. And he didn't run well at the combine. And then all the out-of-shape stuff came up and everything else. And Olave ran a great time at the combine. And he skyrocketed up the board. And I remember when everybody kept throwing around that A.J. Brown comp, and I was like, well, he ran a 4.55 and A.J. ran a 4.99. That was a difference to me. You know what? One person texted us in. I think this guy thinks he's being a smartass, but I think he's dead on this one. Kroger Chipmates are comparable to Nabisco Chips Ahoy. You know the store brand stuff? Like the Walgreens brand allergy medication that's in the blue box that looks like Claritin, but it's not Claritin? That's comparable, right? This is comparable. It's the same thing, right? Ian, if I get Kroger brand Claritin as opposed to regular Claritin, it's the same drug, right?
I don't know if it's exactly the same as far as the ingredients exactly, but they say it does. It works the same.
I mean,
I'm not a, pharmacist, so I don't know exactly as far as what's in all the medicines and the ingredients, but it does say, hey, this will work just as well as the other.
That's a comp. That's the comp. That's what I'm talking about. If you tell me his comp is Randy Moss, I think I'm getting Randy Moss. I stand on that. 615-737-1025. We'll wrap it up next. 615-737-1025 with one thing that I am now back in the habit of doing in the first time since I can't remember, probably 2021. We'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
And the noise increases as the time decreases.
And Ottawa is not going to get a shot on goal this period.
Nope. They've gone the whole third period without a shot on goal. And the Predators win the game by a final of 4-1.
Stillman and company, there you go. That was the final last night. And Ottawa, like, as the clock was running down, I mean, Ottawa, I played basketball at USN, and I know they had a great season or whatever, and they're much better, I think, than they were when I was there. But at USN, we'd play against, like, MBA and Brentwood Academy and those guys, and every now and then we'd get a competitive ball game in. But for the most part in basketball, we didn't. And so we'd play hard, and then all of a sudden we'd lose by 16 or 22 or something like that and be running out the clock, and it's like, oh, well, here you go. That was what Ottawa looked like last night at the end of the game. And I was noticing the shot counts, like in the second period. I'm like, they have like 18 shots. That's not very good. And I looked at the shot count, and the Predators were up like 30-something to 20-something. I'm like, wow. I mean, that was a dominant period. So guess what we're doing for the first time since 2021? Tonight, we've got basketball. Tennessee plays. And then after that, we got St. Louis playing Edmonton. Scoreboard watching, baby. We're back at it for the first time since Dallas in 2021. Well, it's time to scoreboard watch. I mean, we haven't done scoreboard. Ian, we haven't scoreboard watched in forever around here.
It feels nice, doesn't it? Feels good again.
My family, we got Sunday ticket in like 2004 because we wanted to be able to watch the Colts with Peyton and the Titans, and then the Titans were terrible, and we didn't have any need for Sunday ticket for 15 years. And now it's like, great, TNT game tonight. I'm watching. I mean, it's worth, because go Edmonton tonight. I mean, it's in the best interest of the Predators. Speaking of the Predators, they got you set with Smashville Live. Michael McCarron, who is on a heater. 2 games with goals in a row. Dante Fabro, they're at Brewhouse South in Cool Springs. That is coming up next. Enjoy Stillman and company. A big one against John Hines tomorrow night. We'll be live at Bridgestone Arena. Stillman and company. We'll see you tomorrow, too.